Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin this afternoon, we have to take a 5-minute recess. Due to some technical issues, we have to reboot the camera system. So maybe a 5-minute recess, and then we'll begin again.
1-minute bell.
1-minute bell will sound before we start. Apparently, yes. Apparently Rick coming back was just bad luck. Have you... Just for everyone's attention, there's still a little more work required, so we'll have another 5 minutes or so before things get started. Sorry for the delay. We can ring the 1 minute bell again. Please be seated in the meantime, yes. I'd like to thank everyone for their patience. We are now ready to proceed, and before we get to the normal business, we have some special business to tend to. The Honourable Government House Leader. Please be seated, everyone. Honourable Government House Leader.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. I have a series of leave requests for the House. Could you please canvass the House for leave to allow the Honourable First Minister to make a statement to the House without responses before commencing with routine proceedings? The purpose of the statement will be to offer an apology on behalf of the Manitoba government to Edward Ambrose and Richard Bouvet. Then, Honourable Speaker, can you please canvass the House for leave to allow Edward Ambrose and Richard Bouvet to be seated on the floor of the House for the statement? Lastly, can you please canvass the House for leave to have a 15-minute recess or 10-minute recess at the conclusion of the statement?
Is there leave to allow the Honourable First Minister to make a statement to the House without responses before commencing routine procedures? Is there leave? Leave has been granted. Is there leave to allow Edward Ambrose and Richard Bouvet to be seated on the floor of the House for the statement? Is there leave? Leave has been granted. Lastly, is there leave to have a 10-minute recess at the conclusion of the statement? Is there leave? Leave has been granted. Please be seated. I would like to draw attention to all honourable members to the Speaker's Gallery first, where we have with us today Eileen Ambrose, Tyrell Trinidad, Taryn Bouvet, Evelyn Stockey, Kurt Stockey, Judy Dunn, Maurice Dunn, Bill Gange, and our very special guests seated on the floor of the chamber today, Richard Bouvet and Edward Ambrose. On behalf of all honourable members, we welcome you all here today. The Honourable First Minister.
Honourable Speaker, we are sometimes asked to understand empathy and compassion by considering what it's like to walk a mile in another person's shoes. And if that statement is true, if that teaching is correct, then our honored guests here today will perhaps understand compassion and empathy on a level that very few of us will ever be able to approach. Such is the distance that each of them has walked in another's shoes. I rise today to deliver an apology that has been a long time coming for actions that harmed 2 children, 2 sets of parents, and 2 families across many generations. I want to welcome 2 people born in Manitoba to the Legislature today. And it's the circumstances around their birth that sent each of them on a journey that is now bringing them home. Mr. Edward Ambrose and Mr. Richard Bouvet have come to this legislature seeking something that has been owed to them for 68 years. In fact, it's been owed to them their entire lives. Ed and Richard are here today as 2 people wronged by the Manitoba government and the institutions they should have been able to trust. They were wronged from the very first day each of them arrived here on earth at a hospital in Arborg. On that first day, Ed and Richard were switched at birth. Each was brought home to the other's family in town some 100 kilometers apart. And one moment, the lives they were supposed to grow into were uprooted and planted into the others. This was a failure of the system that would go unrecognized for decades. Now, the story of their families are ones which are familiar to many of us as Manitobans. One child raised as part of the Ukrainian community in the farming town of Rembrandt. The other raised in the Métis community by his mother and grandparents alongside siblings in St. Laurent. Both living through the joy and grief unique to the lives that they were transported into. For Eddie, spent his early years on the family farm, going to picnics, and listening to Ukrainian folk songs before bed. He went on to grieve the loss of both of his parents by the young age of 12. For Richard, who grew up speaking Cree and French at home and was left to care for his siblings at far too young an age. He grieved the loss of his dad, his grandparents, and a life that was impacted by day school and trauma passed down through the generations. Both boys ended up moving between foster homes, and I imagine that they struggled to make sense of the world around them at many times over the years. Remarkably, throughout these years, their lives found a way of overlapping time and time again. They were connected without knowing it. There was a time when, as a child on the playground, Eddie asked a girl from a few towns over to be on his baseball team at recess, not knowing she was actually his biological sister. And as a young boy, Richard's love of fishing, as a teenager actually, brought him to the same shore as his biological sister, who was casting beside him in British Columbia. Years later, when Richard stopped in at a bar, it turned out to be the same place that that same woman worked. And he sat there, not knowing that she was in fact his sister. There was the fact that for many years, Eddie's biological sister has, up until very recently, lived just a few blocks away from him. Even though there were so many times when they could have crossed paths, it would take almost 7 decades for them to meet. When Richard was 3 provinces over, working as a captain of a deep-sea fishing vessel on the West Coast, and Eddie was here in Winnipeg, retired and caring for his grandchildren. They were first introduced through a phone call. Then, in a long-awaited reunion here in Manitoba, where they came face to face with each other and face to face with the reality of the life that should have been their own. In that meetings, the lives they had lived changed. And from what I understand, a new stage of life began. I can only imagine what it must have been like in that moment to at once let go of a part of yourself that you believed yourself to be, and at the same time meet a version of who you might have become. With this knowledge, real questions of identity pushed up against decades of lived experience. There is a deep, painful loss and questions that remain. For Richard, who was raised Métis and endured the pain of being denied the ability to speak his language and suffered in the day school and then taken away as part of the 60s scoop. Richard, in spite of this, forged deep bonds with a caring foster family and found a positive path forward. And today, as I mentioned, worked as a captain of a fishing crew in British Columbia. For Edward, who was raised without the knowledge of his Indigenous heritage, without having important teachings passed on to him, which he could have then shared with his own children and grandchildren. Both men have parents that they've never met. Family members they forever lost the opportunity to forge relationships with. There's so much to make up for. When you talk to Ed and Richard about how this revelation has changed their lives, I have to say that their focus isn't just on what they've missed out on. They're hopeful about what has been added to their lives as well. The new family members who they're now getting to meet, who they're eager to share stories with and create new memories alongside. And at this stage of their lives, both men are embracing the old, but also building something new for themselves and for their families. Eddie and his children have been recognized now as citizens of the Manitoba Métis Federation. He's learning to beat, and he brings his grandson to powwows. Richard has come back to visit Manitoba, going on to form new connections with his newly reunited sisters and family. Richard's daughters got tattoos of the last name, which they now know is their true inheritance, Ambrose. Eddie is thinking of taking on his birth parents' last name too, Bouvet. It seems to me that in meeting both of you today, and in hearing the way that you speak about each other with empathy and compassion, and the empathy and compassion for who you understood yourself to be in the past as well, that it's clear that you both have reverence for the people who raised you and for the lives that made you. And if I can say, it seems each of you are not necessarily trying to reach back for something from the past, but instead to embrace the future that you have in front of you now. What happened to you cannot be undone, but it must be acknowledged and it must be atoned for. That's why we've welcomed you into the Legislature today. This is the people's building of Manitoba. And while we cannot take back the series of failures that caused your pain, we can perhaps make things a little easier for you now. In offering our sincere regret in response to the questions you have long asked. Mr. Ambrose, Mr. Bouvet, at the very least, you are owed this much. I stand here as the Premier of Manitoba to apologize to each of you directly. Richard Bouvet, I am sorry. Edward Ambrose, I am sorry. On behalf of the Manitoba government, we sincerely apologize for our failure to care for you, to protect you, to ensure that you would grow up with the love of the families who welcomed you into this world. We apologize to Camille and Laurette Bouvet, to James and Kathleen Ambrose for being denied the chance to raise you and to never have known the joy of parenting you. We apologize to your children and grandchildren for depriving them for so many years of their rightful inheritance, culture, identity, and perhaps most of all, family. For these things, we are sorry. We hope these words will help you to reconcile the person you were for the most extended periods of your life with the person that you were at birth. And we offer you this gesture in a spirit of healing and reconciliation. A great Manitoban, Justice Murray Sinclair, has said that the need for reconciliation has often arisen in our country's history when we have denied children the ability to answer 4 basic questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? It strikes me, Mr. Bouvet and Mr. Ambrose, that the province of Manitoba made a terrible mistake that stood in the way of you being able to answer these questions for many, many years. But today, we hope to support your personal healing, the healing of your families, by accepting responsibility for mistakes that prevented you from knowing the truth about the first 2 of those 4 big questions: who you are and where you came from. To the 3rd question of why you are here, live in this life, I cannot presume to answer, but I know that both of your lives are meaningful. And perhaps our government's words today and actions from here on in can help you with that 4th question, so that you, your children, and your grandchildren can answer the question of where you are going together. Miigwech, merci. Thank you very much.
On behalf of everyone in the assembly today, we welcome you to our building and wish you nothing but success going forward. Thank you. We'll now take a 10-minute recess. 1-minute bells will sound. Please be seated. Routine proceedings, introduction of bills. Committee reports, tabling of reports, ministerial statements. And before I move on to member statements, I'd like to draw the attention of all honorable members to the public gallery, where we have with us today Jenna Warkentine, Tricia Warkentine, and Anita Weeb, who are the guests of the honorable member for Morden Winkler. On behalf of all honorable members, welcome you here today. Member statements. The honorable member for McPhillips.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Today I rise to acknowledge Luke Robbins, a remarkable young curler who will be representing Team Manitoba at the 2024 Canada Junior Curling Championships. Luke's love for curling goes way back to when he would watch his mother and grandfather play at West St. Paul Curling Club. One day he decided to give it a shot and found a home at the club and in the sport. Over his decade-long journey, Luke has participated in several provincial curling championships, which were accompanied by numerous awards. He also represented our province at the national stage as Team Manitoba 2 in 2022. Luke has made a name for himself not only as a championship curler, but also as an active community member. After hearing of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, he began fundraising for humanitarian relief efforts and volunteered at the Ukrainian National Federation to help displaced folks settle in our province. However, he knew he could combine his passion for curling and his desire to do good. That's why just last year, Luke launched an Introduction to Curling program for Ukrainian refugees. His passion and big heart attracted more than 50 people from around the province to learn this classic Canadian sport. Luke was recognized for his initiative as the inaugural recipient of the Curling Canada All Heart Award. This Saturday, March 23rd, Luke and his teammates Jace Freeman, Ryan Ostrowski, and Nick Semf will be representing Manitoba at the 2024 Canada Junior Curling Championships as Team Manitoba 2 in Fort McMurray. Luke and his team are emerging from a strong season and have no doubt that their strong work ethic and tight-knit community will carry them through the competition. I ask all members to join me in congratulating Luke and his team as they go for gold at the Nationals this coming weekend.
The honorable member for Red River North.
Honorable Speaker, I rise in the House today to honor two brothers from my constituency of Red River North. Alexander and Sam began their lacrosse journey when introduced to the sport by a friend at a young age and have been playing ever since. The Angus brothers now play for the Winnipeg Blizzard lacrosse team and compete across Western Canada. The Angus family have a history of playing lacrosse. Their older brother, Will, competed in the first international indoor junior lacrosse event in 2023, and their father, Colin, also loves the game and coached locally here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alexander and Sam Angus competed in the 2024 International Indoor Junior Lacrosse Commonwealth Cup. This event was held in Melbourne, Australia this past month, and the Angus boys were chosen to represent Canada. This exciting trip to Australia was part of Canada's efforts to grow the sport in different parts of the world. While there, the team competed in a 4-day round robin where Canada brought home the win. Alexander scored 14 goals while competing in Australia. The players held camps and clinics for the children wanting to develop their skills. The Angus brothers were thrilled to have participated in this event as it aimed to engage more people in the game and teach young people about lacrosse. Honorable Speaker, I would ask my colleagues to join me in welcoming Alexander and Sam, who are here joining us in the gallery with their parents, Colin and Susan, to the chamber today and congratulate them on their tremendous efforts, accomplishments in Australia. Here they are, the winners.
The Honorable Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure, Consumer Protection, and Government Services.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Environment and climate change are priorities for the constituents of Wolseley. So on their behalf, I'm happy to stand in the Legislature to bring members' attention to two important environment awareness opportunities. Tomorrow, March 22nd, is World Water Day. As we all sit in the chamber this afternoon sipping water or other beverages made from water, we should be reminded and humbled that our drinking water is all sourced from the community of Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. We are also reminded through the mission of World Water Day that access to water is a human right, yet over 2 billion people worldwide live without that access. Colleagues who were at the Red River Basin Commission fish dinner last night heard that the theme of World Water Day 2024 is water for peace. When we cooperate on water, we create a positive ripple effect, fostering harmony, generating prosperity, and building resilience to shared challenges. As citizens of Manitoba, we can all work to conserve water in our homes in the obvious ways, but we can also eat local, more plant-based meals, shop for sustainable products, and cut down on food waste. Saturday, March 24th, is Earth Hour. Earth Hour began over 15 years ago with 2 million Australians turning off their lights for 1 hour to bring attention to caring for the Earth. Now it is a global movement. Millions of people across 190 countries participate. This Saturday night, you are also asked to turn off your lights from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Landmarks and homes across the world will switch off to symbolically give an hour for Earth. But this year, participants are also asked to spend 60 minutes doing something positive for our planet. Soon, Wolseley constituents will be out in force giving many hours to the Earth through neighborhood cleanups, planting our gardens, and composting. I encourage all Manitobans to do the same, and I invite all members of this legislature to participate in Earth Hour in your home constituencies on Saturday evening. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler.
Honourable Speaker, I'm thrilled to rise in the chamber today to share with you two remarkable community centres in my constituency of Morden Winkler. Central Station Community Centre in Winkler and 500 Stephen Community Centre in Morden. These incredible organizations offer a wide range of programs and services that truly make a difference in our lives of our community members. Central Station Community Centre is the hub of support and resources, offering various programs such as cooking classes, community care programs, public drop-ins, advocacy, housing support services, and free meal programs, just to name a few. Every Monday, they host a free meal program where people can share stories over a warm home-cooked meal. They also offer a 10-week program called Community Action Training Program, helping individuals to develop skills advocating for their needs and those around them, empowering them to make positive changes in the lives of those around them and within their community. I had the opportunity to participate in the coldest night of the year through Central Station, raising support and awareness for homelessness in our community. 500 Stephen Community Centre has played a pivotal role in bringing together people in Morden. It was created to provide a safe and inclusive space where individuals from all walks of life can come together, share, and forge meaningful connections. In a world that often feels divided, the Centre stands as a beacon of hope, unity, and inclusivity. The Centre caters to nonprofit and community groups, offering much-needed space for meetings and offices. A wide variety of programs are run through the facility, from the local food bank, farmers market, skill development programs, and community mobilization programs. They also host a hot meal for the community. Whether you're a longtime resident or a newcomer to the neighborhood, they ensure that everyone feels welcome and valued. The Centre also celebrated International Women's Day, emphasizing the importance of supporting and uplifting women in our community. Please rise with me in honoring Jenna and Tricia Workington, Anita Weeb, seated in the gallery, and to thank all volunteers that serve at the community centers in Morden and Winkler and across our great province.
Oral questions. Nope. Oh, sorry. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning, my apologies.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise today asking us to remember the times we would head down to the local video store, pick out a video cassette or two, watch with family or friends. Many of us probably recall debating with those same family and friends what to watch and which movie to pick out. The local video store was a great place to gather and lose oneself in the many aisles and stacks of cassettes and DVDs trying to decide what to watch next. Thanks to the Video King store in the constituency in which I represent, these were not distant memories, but rather the current reality for the many folks in Transcona and the surrounding area. Video King owner Glenn Fuel and his family have been running the business for 40 years and is a cherished staple for many families in our community, as well as, of course, the surrounding area. Video King, at its height, supplied small-town Manitoba and locations throughout Canada with over 222 different pieces of information, video cassettes, DVDs, the works, throughout the past 40 years. Honorable Speaker, many were sad to hear of the Transcona location closing a residential portion of their business announced the same day as their 40th anniversary. As technology progresses and the film industry adapts, many of us I know wax nostalgic about making a trip down to the local video store. Transcona is blessed with many businesses that make our community unique. I want to thank Glenn and his family for their dedication to our area. While we wish him all the best in their future endeavors, I hope he knows his customers are grateful for providing entertainment to them, for bringing them together, and for being a significant part of many a person's nostalgia for the local video store and for days gone by. Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Oral questions. The Honourable Member for Roblin.
First, the Finance Minister said the NDP would be fighting Trudeau on carbon tax on home heating. Then the Premier said no. Then the Premier met with other premiers and said yes. And then he came back to Manitoba and said no. But while the NDP was flip-flopping, Saskatchewan took action. Premier Moe's budget yesterday revealed our neighbors to the west are getting over $400 a year in relief on their home heating bills. Oh. Now the carbon tax is scheduled to go up again next week by 23%. I hate to say it, but Manitobans could really use another NDP flip-flop. It's not too late. Will the Premier join with Manitobans calling for a stop
Member's
to the
time
23%
has expired.
carbon tax?
The Honourable First Minister.
We've been very active on the subject of affordability, particularly on the energy file. That's right. We know that on January 1st of this year, we took action to cut the provincial fuel tax to zero. That's something that the PCs never did, and as a result, we've had the lowest inflation rate in the country for 2 months straight.
That's amazing.
The honourable member opposite might choose to ask the member for Springfield-Rashot or Swan River or Turtle Mountain or any number of the colleagues who served in the past government, because they all ran 2 times on implementing a carbon tax in Manitoba. You know who stopped them? We did.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Roblin on a supplementary question.
Here's a fact this Premier and Finance Minister have completely ignored. More than $143 million in carbon tax revenues are owed to over 43,000 small businesses across Manitoba. Despite paying more than their fair share of the carbon tax, these small businesses haven't received a penny back. Now, with a 23% hike coming next week, the federal government is reducing the amount of carbon tax revenue it plans to return to small businesses by 44%. Yet not a peep from the NDP. Why is this Premier refusing to stand up for small businesses in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, we took action to help small business on January 1st of this year. Every business owner with a fleet vehicle, anybody who puts their name on the side of a truck to be able to put their capital at risk to earn an income, benefited from our cut to the provincial fuel tax. Tens of millions of dollars per month that is being saved by not only the average Manitoban, but also small business. That's what we're delivering when it comes to relief. However, I think back to 2018 when the member for Springfield was shot, and Swan River and Turtle Mountain, Riding Mountain, they all were lined up to bring in their PC carbon tax. You know who stood up for Manitobans then and blocked that from becoming law? It was the Manitoba NDP. That's right.
The honourable member for Roblin on a final supplementary question.
7 out of 10 premiers are standing up for their residents and calling for a stop to the April 1st carbon tax hike. I'll table an email I received last week from a constituent. It says, I'm a resident of your constituency. I'm watching the news and they have shown a list of all the premiers who oppose the carbon tax. Why is our premier not on that list? Why indeed, Honourable Speaker? 70% of Canadians and 76% of Manitobans are saying no to the carbon tax hike next week. Will the Premier indulge us in one last flip-flop, join the rest of the country, stand up for Manitobans, and publicly call for a stop to this unfair and unnecessary carbon tax hike?
The Honourable First Minister.
One thing our government is consistency.
That's right.
Again, on January 1st of this year, we cut the provincial fuel tax to zero to save you money. When we were in opposition, we stopped the PCs from bringing in a carbon tax here in Manitoba, even though they tried to do so time after time after time. When it comes to the actions of the other premiers, they're going to do what's in the best interest of their constituents. What I'm doing for Manitobans is saving you money.
That's right.
The question that I'd ask for the member opposite is if 70% of other premiers engage in anti-trans rhetoric, should we join them on that too?
The Honourable Member for Fort White.
Honourable Speaker, when the news broke that Imperial Oil was shutting down a line bringing oil to this province for 3 months, the Premier said, we only have a week left. Then he flip-flopped, like he's done so many times before. No, wait, we have lots of fuel coming in, and assured Manitobans that all was well, and he was, quote, bringing the full weight of the provincial government to bear. Now, within 72 hours, the full weight has gas jumping almost 10 cents, gas stations are closing early, they're rationing, and they're putting limits on Manitobans. Will the Premier simply acknowledge that when it comes to affordability and gas pricing, he is nothing but a showman, and his empty words have no meaning to Manitobans after so many flip-flops?
The Honourable First Minister.
We've been hard at work on ensuring that Manitobans save money and to ensure that there's an adequate supply of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel here for the people of Manitoba. Again, the member opposite wants to engage and talk of a flip-flop when his party brought in a carbon tax twice and then now is trying to fight the last election campaign after changing their opinion on that. So we're not exactly sure where they stand. I can update the House and let you know that speaking to suppliers earlier today, we now understand that there's an 11-day supply of gasoline in most of the suppliers' situation and a 2-week supply of gasoline when we're talking to a few of those suppliers in the same instance.
The Honourable Member for Fort White on a supplementary question.
The Premier led Manitobans astray when he said everything is under control. It's not. I table this gas comparison, and Manitoba is not the cheapest gas in Canada. On April 1st, the carbon tax will increase to 17 cents per litre, and on July 1st, another 14 cents, a total of 32 cents, all thanks to this Premier and the NDP government. The question is simple. How high will this Premier let gas prices rise before he realizes that his empty words and TikTok videos don't fuel our economy, but taking leadership does, like the other 7 premiers across Canada? Will this Premier join the other 70% of premiers and call on the Liberal NDP coalition to axe the carbon tax?
Your time is expired. The Honourable First Minister.
Pretty simple answer. I'll never let the gas tax get as high as it was under his government.
Yeah, that's right.
Honourable member for Fort White on a final supplementary question.
Honorable Speaker, proof that what the Premier says is empty words and not true. And all done with a cynical smile that Manitobans can see.
Order, please.
He talks about consequences and threatens local grocery stores. He has no plan for affordability other than taking credit for previous PC tax cuts. He proclaims the failed gas tax stunt is a win and acts like a showman. But it's more expensive to buy gas now in Manitoba than it was before the gas tax stunt. Will the Premier stand up today and call for an axe the tax on his punitive carbon tax?
Before I recognize the First Minister, I'd just like to caution the member from Fort White that some of his words were dangerously close to being unparliamentary, so I would remind him to please pay attention to what's saying, because words are important. Thank you. The Honourable First Minister.
We've taken immediate action to save Manitobans money on the price of fuel. And as a result, we've had the lowest inflation rate in our province of anywhere in the country for 2 months in a row. Even this week, the price of gas here is 14 cents cheaper than it is in Saskatchewan or in northwestern Ontario. I invite the member opposite to take a look at the charts, which shows that Manitobans are still saving money because of the actions that our government has taken. However, I do recognize that the member opposite is in a tough spot. He's trying to earn his way back in the good graces so he can go to Mr. Poilievre's Axe the Tax rally next week. And so he's trying to adopt the language, and so we encourage him to keep standing up in here and talk about axe the tax, spike the hike, bake the bread, butter the muffins, put on the shoes.
Time has expired. The Honourable Member for Midland.
Honourable Speaker, this Premier gave Manitobans his word that their failed gas tax would do wonders to gas prices and will directly lower grocery prices. Well, maybe he hasn't stepped into a grocery store until he bought olive oil and corn pops for a campaign ad. Clearly, this Premier has zero understanding of how the food industry works. Will this Premier admit that this is just another broken promise?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
As part of our pre-budget consultations, I was honored again to have some great opportunities to speak with Manitobans across the province. And one of the number one things we heard in those consultations was the struggles that they faced over the last 7 years under the previous government. They took no action to make life more affordable for Manitobans. We're taking actions with our fuel tax holiday. More good work to come. Looking forward to bring forward our budget on April 2nd.
The Honourable Member for Midland on a supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, this Premier said, and I quote, "If we don't see those savings materialize, then that's when we're going to follow up on those further steps." I table an article to refresh his memory. So I have a simple question for this Premier. What further steps has he followed up on to address grocery prices for Manitobans?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
We've got news for the members opposite. Inflation is the lowest it's been in Canada for 2 months in a row in this province. That's because of the actions we're taking. Not like what the previous government did, which was to raise energy costs on Manitobans, find creative and new and novel ways of jacking up hydro rates, passing legislation in the middle of a pandemic and an affordability crisis to raise hydro rates. That's their record. No action. We're taking action. We're making life more affordable.
The Honourable Member for Midland on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, this Premier and this NDP government is doing nothing. He's giving struggling Manitobans false hope that dashes every time they see high prices at the grocery store. Last week on the NDP website, their grocery plan showed page cannot be found. I table this page. But now it has been taken down completely, just like their wait times data. The NDP has mocked Manitobans by pretending their promises no longer exist. When will this Premier start taking accountability for his promises?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
The members opposite want to talk about raising food prices. They're not looking in the mirror. They raised the cost of crown leases for farmers in Manitoba by 300%. Shame. That's their record. They raised the cost of living on those folks by 300%. That's a huge increase that contributes to the increase in costs of food. That's their record. They also raised the cost of living on renters. Renters are folks who are on fixed incomes. Seniors, that's their record, raising taxes on renters by $175. Each and every single one of them have that on their record. What's our record? Making life more affordable. More great news to come on April 2nd.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler.
Honorable Speaker, families were promised action. Instead, they just get empty promises. Gas prices are up. Gas prices were up, and that was before the gas shortage. Grocery prices were up, and a carbon tax increase on April 1st is going to make that worse.
Shame.
Why will this Premier not stand up for Manitobans and oppose this tax hike?
Hear, hear. Why?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
The members opposite just seem to be ignoring the reality in front of them. We have the lowest gas prices in the country. Again, Manitobans finally have a government that's listening, that cares, that can actually understand the challenges that average Manitobans are facing. That's very different than what they had for 7 years under the members opposite. A government that was disconnected from the challenges that they were facing. Right. We've got a new day in this province. We've got a new government that's doing great work to make life more affordable. More great news on April 2nd.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler on a supplementary question.
It's basic math, Honorable Speaker. When Justin Trudeau adds 23% to the carbon tax, things are going to get more expensive. That's the Liberal NDP coalition's plan.
NDP.
Manitobans need relief, not punishing tax increases.
Shame.
Why does this Premier represent Ottawa to Manitobans instead of Manitobans to Ottawa?
Whoa! Yes!
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Honourable Speaker, there's something wildly embarrassing about hearing this theatre that they're bringing forward when they themselves brought forward a carbon tax proposal into this very House for this legislature to vote on. That's their record. So they're coming in here flip-flopping in this. Then they go off to Ottawa and waste millions of dollars of Manitoba taxpayer money on unnecessary lawsuits. That's their record. What's our record? Action. Actually reducing costs of living for Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Morden Winkler on a final supplementary question.
Honourable Speaker, this shouldn't be a divisive issue.
Shouldn't be.
Most premiers stand united on this.
70%. 70%.
Even Liberal premiers are putting their citizens first. But not this NDP government.
Nope.
Only in Manitoba and BC are NDP premiers putting their allegiance with Trudeau ahead of their constituents.
Shame.
Why does this premier support a 23% tax hike?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
The member's correct. This shouldn't be a divisive issue. We invite the members opposite to join us in celebrating the good work being done by the... Come on over. Our upcoming budget is going to have a huge focus on improving affordability. We are so excited to see the members opposite vote in support of our upcoming budget when they see all the great affordability news coming from Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Borderland.
The Liberal NDP carbon tax is set to increase by 23% on April 1st to 18 cents per litre of fuel. Wow. And the carbon tax is applied to everything from home heating to gasoline. And to add insult to injury, the Liberal NDP coalition forces Manitobans and Canadians to pay GST on the carbon tax. The carbon tax is nothing more than a tax grab. Will the Premier stand up for Manitobans today and tell Justin Trudeau to cancel the carbon tax?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Look, I hope that the member opposite recognizes that members from our citizens of our rural communities are very grateful for the fuel tax holiday that we brought in. We know that folks living in rural communities drive a lot, they have further to go to work, further to go to school. Our fuel tax holiday measure has brought huge savings to folks living in communities like the one belonging to the member opposite. We're bringing good news, Mr. Speaker, for all Manitobans. We're going to keep doing that important work of making life more affordable.
The honourable member for Borderland.
Manitobans are getting hammered by this NDP's government's property tax hikes, and they're in the order of 18%. And in a few months, this NDP government will raise the price of gas another 14 cents as the temporary gas tax stunt expires. The least this NDP premier could do is tell Justin Trudeau to cancel the carbon tax. Will he stand up for Manitobans today?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
You know what hammered Manitobans, Mr. Honourable Speaker? 7 years of living under this last PC government. Raising taxes on renters, raising costs on farmers, raising electricity rates for Manitobans, and not once in 7 years did they reduce the fuel tax. We did within months of coming into government. That's what Manitobans can expect from our NDP government.
The Honourable Member for Borderland.
7 premiers and nearly 80% of Canadians oppose the carbon tax. Why won't this NDP premier find the courage to do the right thing, stand up for Manitobans, and tell his Liberal NDP friends in Ottawa to axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Look, Honourable Speaker, again, 7 years, no action. 7 years. And what did they do during that period? They didn't take action, and they continued to introduce carbon taxes right here in this very House. That's their record. They're flip-flopping back and forth. They don't even know what side of the House they're on anymore. What are we doing? We're taking action. We're bringing in affordability measures, and there's going to be a whole suite of affordability measures coming forward on April 2nd. We can't wait to bring that good news, and we look forward to the members opposite supporting our budget.
The Honourable Member for Spruce Woods.
It's been 136 days since the Premier's carbon tax dance flip-flop began on the shores of Halifax Harbour, and Manitobans have lost count just how many times he's flipped and flopped back and forth since he returned back to friendly Manitoba. With the 23% tax increase looming, there's still time left to flip back, join his 7 colleagues, and call up his buddy JT to spike the hike. Will he make that phone call today?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
You know, all these questions give me a great opportunity to talk about all the bad decisions Manitoba suffered under this previous PC government. That's right. I'll remind them, they brought in a bill, a hydro bill, that was specifically designed to jack up hydro rates as quickly as possible. For the first time in this province's history, they brought in legislation specifically focused on raising hydro rates during a holiday, Honourable Speaker. That's their record. They don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to making life more affordable. We do. We're doing that work. More good news to come.
The Honourable Member for Borderland on a supplementary question.
The Premier may not have enough gas left in the tank to flip-flop one more time, but we've heard little from the Finance Minister before today on this issue, since he initially flipped when the Premier flopped and said he supported calling out Ottawa for giving unfair carbon tax breaks to Atlantic Canada, while Western Canadians got nothing. Clearly, the Finance Minister wants to be on the right side of this issue. On history, will he give it one more shot, see if he can change the Premier's mind in the week that remains before Trudeau's 23% increase hits Manitobans' grocery bills? Will he change the Premier's mind today?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Honourable Speaker, Manitobans are lucky to finally have a Premier that actually cares about affordability in Manitoba.
That's right. Number 1 Premier in Canada.
We didn't have have that for a long time. Instead, we had a government that didn't understand the affordability challenges that Manitobans were facing, that didn't understand the impacts of the decisions they were making, like their decisions to raise electricity prices on Manitobans over and over and over again. Once more, we are doing that important work of making life more affordable. I'm incredibly proud to be a part of a team that actually understands the challenges Manitobans are facing. More good news to come, Honourable Speaker, on April 2nd.
All right, great job.
The honourable member for Borderland on a...
In his earlier
Spruce
responses,
Woods,
the Premier
excuse me. The honourable member for Spruce Woods.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Final supplementary question.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. They flip-flopped on the carbon tax. They flip-flopped on the fuel tax for farmers. They flip-flopped on their hydro rate freeze. They flip-flopped on new school construction. And they flip-flopped on MPI privatization. We're so close to April 1st, so there's still time for the Premier to flip-flop one last time, get on the right side of history, put this failed environmental policy to bed, and join the growing calls to spike the hike and axe the tax. Will he call Justin Trudeau today?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
You come to the rally. Sorry, guys. You're still not allowed to go to the rally.
Again, Honourable Speaker, every single day for the 7.5 years that they were in government, they charged Manitobans a gas tax. Every single day. That's their record. That's right. Each and every single one of those members who are standing up today, pretending like they care about affordability, charged the fuel tax on Manitobans every single day that they were in government. What did we do? Within months of getting into government, we relieved Manitobans of those costs because we knew that they were struggling. We've got more good news. We look forward to the members opposite supporting our budget on April 2nd.
That's right!
The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Manitobans are losing faith in this government's mismanagement of the CFS crisis. The Minister of Family's comments yesterday regarding the Winnipeg Chief of Police seemed as if she was more concerned with controlling the media narrative than doing her job. The Minister was quoted in a CBC article, which I table now, and she said, and I quote, "The vast majority of children in care are actually thriving and doing well." Honourable Speaker, can the Minister cite where she got this statistic?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Again, I want to share with the House that our department is working very, very hard in respect of CFS, in respect of ensuring that children get the best care possible. And we respect and honor all of those individuals that are doing that sacred work of helping to take care of children that are in care. I want to share with the House that I spoke with the Chief of Police today, and we are on the same page at wanting the best for our children and to ensure that children in care are getting the wraparound supports that they need and the additional services that they need, and that's what our department is doing.
Member's time has expired. The honourable member for Tyndall Park on a supplementary question.
Promoting this idea that most children in care are thriving is incredibly misleading. Downplaying the concerns of many children in CFS care is the equivalent of this minister turning her back on her responsibilities. It is shameful that the minister has not brought forward any tangible solutions, especially when the Chief of Police, AMC, Macy, and foster parents have all agreed that the lack of resources and support available to kids in care and their caregivers. Will the minister confirm today in what capacity will we see supports for children in care in the upcoming budget?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
I would suggest that the House is going to have to wait until April 2nd to hear the good work and the good news that our government across departments is doing in respect of the best for Manitobans. This is a government that cares about Manitobans all Manitobans, and folks will see that on April 2nd. I want to share again, in my conversation with the Chief of Police this morning, it was made very, very clear that he understands and I understand the importance of supporting those resources and those wraparound supports for children that are in care. He and I are going to continue to work together on ensuring that the children that he comes into contact with and that we come into contact with, that we are working together for the best supports
Time has
for our
expired.
children.
The honourable member for Tyndall Park on a final supplementary question.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It is very concerning that the minister is trying to downplay the concerns voiced by so many leaders. In fact, it is a disservice to some of our most vulnerable children here in Manitoba and the incredible people who are caring for them. The minister passed a motion at the recent Standing Committee on Legislative Affairs to conduct a comprehensive review of the Macy Act. Will the minister let us know if she plans to start listening to caregivers and folks on the front lines, and will she provide a specific date as to when this committee will be called to order?
The Honourable Minister, Families.
Miigwech, Honourable Speaker. This morning I hosted our first inaugural matriarch circle made up of matriarchs across the province. Matriarchs and women, Indigenous women that have been doing work in our communities for 30 years. In particular, in respect of child welfare. And we had those discussions this morning in respect of the work that they're doing in the communities, the work that we're doing in the department. And you know, one of the things that was brought up is that those matriarchs don't know any of these people in these chambers. They've been doing that work for 30 years and have never seen one single member opposite show up at any vigils, any rallies, any memorials, any supports for our children in the broader community and certainly community children in care.
The Honourable Member for Waverley.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. While the former PC government found new and creative ways to make life more expensive, our government is proud to be making life more affordable for Manitobans. Our fuel tax holiday is helping families and businesses across this great province. And I know our Finance Minister will have more good news to share for Manitobans on April 2nd. Can the Minister of Finance please tell us which province has the lowest rate of inflation in Canada, and which province is helping reduce inflation across this great country?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. I know the members opposite are eager to hear the answer to this. Our government was very proud to take action right away to pause the 14-cent a litre fuel tax. And my colleague is right that there's more good news to come. But the good news is already rolling in. For the second month in a row, Manitoba has the lowest rate of inflation in all of Canada at 0.9%. Wow. That's right. Our measure is bringing inflation down across the country and helping Manitoba families to make ends meet. The former PC government was all talk. Our government is getting things done for Manitobans. I can't wait to share even more good news on April 2nd.
Great job. The Honourable Member for Selkirk. Nope. The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. This Premier stands in the House and shovels material traditionally found on the floor of barns. While he's taking a victory lap, families are taking another lap.
Order, please. Order, please. I would caution the member very strongly to apologize for using that kind of unparliamentary language. It certainly is not becoming of a member of this legislature. The Honourable Member for Portage La Prairie.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. My apologies for that. This Premier is all sizzle, no steak. Because families had to put those prime cuts back, why does this Premier support a 23% carbon tax increase?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
The member opposite, and definitely I think a little bit of a lesson on protocol would be appropriate, addressing parties across. So thank you for that. But more importantly, I want to acknowledge the agriculture producers in the province of Manitoba for the great work they do. They provide food for everyone across the world and in the province of Manitoba, but more importantly as well, they create 36,555 direct jobs indirectly throughout the province of Manitoba's economy, and basically 9% of the GDP. And we will continue to work with the importance of agriculture producers and added value that we have an opportunity to continue to increase.
Member's time has expired.
Right on.
The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie on a supplementary question. The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I'm glad we've been talking only about the last 2 months. Under this Premier, food prices are growing faster than the national average. I table an article where the Brandon Sun calls this a bluff. His gas tax stunt was a failure, and thanks to this thumb on the scale of the market prices Manitobans are paying, why is he putting his pride before Manitoba affordability?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
May I remind the members opposite and the party opposite, we are sitting in the chambers with the #1 Premier across Canada, and I don't really think, I really appreciate the members opposite's indirect compliment of that being said. But I do want to say about accountability and the opportunity. I suppose, unfortunately, the member opposite wasn't sitting with the previous government, but it's really unrespectable for a 300% increase to Crown land leasees who are the generational farmers that want to continue the importance of agriculture in the province of Manitoba, and yet they turn around and they double bill them in the same year.
The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie on a final supplementary question.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. With the price of groceries, especially things like cereal and that where grain is used, they're going through the roof, will the Premier commit to do the right thing? Join the other 7 premiers, stand up to Justin Trudeau, step up for Manitobans, and spike the hike.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. And I don't know how many times it's been said this afternoon. Manitoba is the lowest as far as the cost of living in the province across Canada, and yet we're not paying attention to the opportunity. Grocery costs, we've been talking to the federal government, and we are working in accordance to work towards opportunities to make life more affordable. But in this side of the House, this government has addressed the issues as far as the price of fuel, hydro rates that continue to go. If this would have stayed in power, the government would have stayed in power. I'm very proud to be standing on this side of the House, not that side of the House. Thank you so much.
The honourable member for Interlake Gimli.
Honourable Speaker, the carbon tax is a punitive tax, and I'm sure that we can all agree on that here in this chamber. Manitobans have been under attack since 2018, and this needs to stop now. The pandemic brought to light the precarious financial situation that so many Manitobans face on a daily basis. The affordability crisis brought on by inflation and further exasperated by tax and spend governments. It's a tipping point. This NDP government has the opportunity right now to truly help Manitobans and all Manitobans, including seniors. This Premier and his ministers flip-flop on their position on the carbon tax. Will he stand today?
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Yeah, again, it gives me honor to rise in the House and to talk about affordability, something that the members opposite do not know anything about, Honourable Speaker. For years, for 7 years, they worked to make life more expensive for Manitobans. Yeah. We keep repeating these same points. They don't seem to recognize their actions and the impacts they had on Manitobans for years with their efforts at raising taxes on renters, raising costs on farmers, raising energy rates. They talk about spiking the hike. The only thing they spiked was electricity rates for 7 years in a row. What's our government doing? Taking action to make life more affordable. More good news to come, Honourable Speaker.
That was impressive.
The honourable member for Interlake Gimli on a supplementary
Honourable
question.
Speaker, Trudeau, with the support of the government opposite and their comrades in Ottawa, continue to try to suck every last penny out of all Manitobans. Agriculture producers have no more to give. Manitobans have no more to give. They need relief now. Bill C-234 gives farmers and Manitobans relief from the carbon tax. Even the federal NDPs are in support of Bill C-234. Nikki Ashton, Daniel Blakey, Leah Gazin, and Jagmeet Singh all voted to support Bill C-234, more than once, in fact. Will this Premier stand with his colleagues in Ottawa and make an honest effort to improve affordability for Manitobans by calling on Ottawa to act?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Member opposite stands in the House and wants to talk about affordability. He was previously the Minister for Agriculture at a time when their government raised costs on farmers by 300%.
Shameful.
Shame, Honourable Speaker. That's his record as the Agriculture Minister. They raised costs on farmers, they raised costs on Manitobans in every corner of the province. Manitobans finally have a government that understands the challenges that they face for many years. We're taking important action to reduce costs of living. We're going to keep doing that work because our government understands the challenges Manitobans face. More good work to come, Honourable Speaker.
The honourable member for Interlake Gimli on a final supplementary
Honourable
question.
Speaker, this government has done nothing to correct the underlying cause of increased food costs. It is expected that food prices will increase by 4.5% in 2024. We cannot continue down this road. One easy and effective way to counter increased food costs is to reduce input costs on those who grow our food. Our carbon tax that the NDP voted against would have froze it at $25 a ton. This NDP government supports $80 a ton. Cut the carbon tax, reduce food costs, it's that simple. Will this government do a common sense thing and commit to cutting the carbon tax?
The Honourable First Minister.
Why'd you do that,
Order. Order. The Honourable First Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It is an honour to rise on behalf of the people of Manitoba and to say that we did take action to reduce the price of gas on January 1st of this year.
That's right.
But that wasn't the first action that we took on affordability. The first action of our government on affordability was actually to reduce input costs in the ag industry.
That's right.
We did that by freezing rates and canceling the hike that member had planned to bring in on beef producers. That helps to contribute to affordability. Now, I also want to update the House that several of our colleagues, including the Minister of Health, were in the community of Lac du Bonnet today to share the good news that we're going to build a personal care home to serve the residents of Eastern Manitoba. And I know that this is an important step for seniors that we can all get behind. The reason I know we can all get behind it, that member was at our announcement cheering for our good news.
Order. The time for oral questions has expired. Petitions. The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie.
Honourable Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. Number one, in 2022, according to Statistics Canada, there was an 11.4% increase in food prices. Staple food products such as baked goods, margarine, and other oils, dairy products, and eggs have seen some of the largest price increases. Number 3, agriculture and agri-food sector contributes close to 10% of Manitoba's GDP. There are increased costs added at every step of the process for Manitoba's agricultural producers. In order to make 18 cents from a loaf of bread worth of wheat, farmers are paying carbon tax at every stage of production to grow the crop and get it to market. Number 5, grain drying, fertilizer and chemical production, mushroom farming, hog operations, the cost of heating a livestock barn, machine shops, and utility buildings are all examples of how the carbon tax on natural gas and other fuels cost farmers and consumers more and more each year. Number 6, in food production, there are currently no viable alternatives to natural gas and propane. The carbon tax takes money away from farmers, making them less profitable and hindering rural agriculture producers' ability to invest in upgrades and improve efficiencies while reducing emissions. Number 7, the provincial government neglected farmers in the 6-month fuel tax holiday until the opposition critic and local stakeholder groups called for their inclusion. Other provincial jurisdiction and leaders have taken action on calling on the federal government to remove the punishing carbon tax and/or stop collecting the carbon tax altogether. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge provincial government to call on the federal government to remove punishing carbon tax on natural gas and other fuels, farm inputs for Manitoba agriculture producers and the agri-food sector, to decrease the cost of putting food on the table for Manitoba consumers. I'd like to read the names of some of the people that have stepped up to sign this petition. Eleanor Giffen, Winnie Duncan, Ida Miller, Shirley Monroe.
Order, please. You're only allowed to read the top 3 names.
My apology, Honorable Speaker, on doing this. My apology. And this is also accompanied by many, many members.
The honourable member for Portage La Prairie.
My apologies, Honorable Speaker, for adding more than 3 names. And this was also signed by many, many other Manitobans. Thank you.
Other petitions, the honourable member for Agassiz.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. The federal government has mandated a consumption-based carbon tax with the stated goal of financially pressuring Canadians to make decisions to reduce their carbon emissions. Number 2, Manitoba Hydro estimates that even with a high-efficiency furnace, the carbon tax is costing the average family over $200 annually, even more for those with older furnaces. Home heating in Manitoba, number 3, home heating in Manitoba is not a choice or a decision for Manitobans to make. It is a necessity of life, with an average of almost 200 days below 0 degrees Celsius annually. Number 4, the federal government has selectively removed the carbon tax off of home heating oil in the Atlantic provinces of Canada, but has indicated they have no intention to provide the same relief to Manitobans heating their homes. Number 5, Manitoba Hydro indicates that natural gas heating is one of the most affordable options available to Manitobans, and it can be cost prohibitive for households to replace their heating source. Number 6, premiers across Canada, including in the Atlantic provinces that benefit from this decision, have collectively sent a letter to the federal government calling on it to extend the carbon tax exemption to all forms of home heating with the exception of Manitoba. Number 7, Manitoba is one of the only provincial jurisdictions to have not agreed with the stance that all Canadians' home heating bills should be exempt from the carbon tax. Number 8, provincial leadership in other jurisdictions have already committed to removing the federal carbon tax from home heating bills. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to remove the federal carbon tax on home heating bills for all Manitobans to provide them much-needed relief. This has been signed by many Manitobans: Ella Hamlin, Kenzie Ranke, Garouche Batar, Madeline Wheeler, Matt Prepost.
Order, please. You're only allowed to read the top 3 names on the petition. The Honourable Member for Agassiz. I'll get it right one of these days. Further petitions? The Honourable Member for Roblin.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. The federal government has mandated a consumption-based carbon tax with the stated goal of financially pressuring Canadians to make decisions to reduce their carbon emissions. Manitoba Hydro estimates that even with a high-efficiency furnace, the carbon tax is costing the average family over $200 annually, even more for those with older furnaces. Home heating in Manitoba is not a choice or a decision for Manitobans to make. It is a necessity of life, with an average of almost 200 days below 0 degrees Celsius annually. The federal government has selectively removed the carbon tax off of home heating oil in the Atlantic provinces of Canada, but has indicated they have no intention to provide the same relief to Manitobans heating their homes. Manitoba Hydro indicates that natural gas heating is one of the most affordable options available to Manitobans.
Thanks to us.
And it can be cost prohibitive for households to replace their heating source. Premiers across Canada, including in the Atlantic provinces that benefit from this decision, have collectively sent a letter to the federal government calling on it to extend the carbon tax exemption to all forms of home heating, with the exception of Manitoba. Manitoba is one of the only provincial jurisdictions to have not agreed with the stance that all Canadians' home heating bills should be exempt from the carbon tax. Provincial leadership in other jurisdictions have already committed to removing the federal carbon tax from home heating bills. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to remove the federal carbon tax on home heating bills for all Manitobans to provide them much-needed relief. And this petition has been signed by many, many, many Manitobans.
Further petitions? The Honourable Member for Springfield-Rashad.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for leave to read the petition for the member for Brandon West.
Is there leave for the member for Springfield Rashad? Leave has been denied. The honourable member
Manitobans have
for
concern.
Morden Winkler.
Why don't you want to hear the petition?
Honorable
Very nice.
Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. These are the reasons for the petition. Beginning March 17, 2024, persons struggling with mental health as their sole condition may access medical assistance in dying unless Parliament intervenes. Suicidality is often a symptom of mental illness, and suicide is the second leading cause of death for Canadians between the age of 10 and 19. Number 3, there have been reports of unsolicited introduction of medical assistance in dying to non-seeking persons, including Canadian veterans, as a solution for their medical and mental health issues. Number 4, legal and medical experts are deeply concerned that permitting Canadians suffering from depression and other mental illness to access euthanasia would undermine suicidal prevention efforts and risk normalizing suicide as a solution for those suffering from mental illness. Number 5, the federal government is bound by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to advance and protect the life, liberty, and security of its citizens. Number 6, the Manitobans consider it a priority to ensure that adequate supports are in place for the mental health of all Canadians. Number 7, vulnerable Manitobans must be given suicide prevention counseling instead of suicide assistance. Number 8, the federal government should focus on increasing mental health supports to provinces and improve access to these supports instead of offering medical assistance in dying for those with mental illness. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to lobby the federal government to stop the expansion of medical assistance in dying to those for whom mental illness is the sole condition. 2, we urge the provincial government to lobby the federal government to protect Canadians struggling with mental illness by facilitating treatment, recovery, and medical assistance in living, not death. This is signed by Mary Benson, Steve Ackerson, Val Dick, and many other Manitobans.
Well done. Well done. Well done, Gary.
The honourable member for Spruce Woods.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, the federal government has mandated a consumption-based carbon tax with the stated goal of financially pressuring Canadians to make decisions to reduce their carbon emissions. Number 2, Manitoba Hydro estimates that even with a high efficiency furnace, the carbon tax is costing the average family over $200 annually, even more for those with older furnaces. Number 3, home heating in Manitoba is not a choice or a decision for Manitobans to make. It is a necessity of life. With an average of almost 200 days below 0 degrees Celsius annually. Number 4, the federal government has selectively removed the carbon tax off of home heating oil in the Atlantic provinces of Canada, but has indicated they have no intention to provide the same relief to Manitobans heating their homes. Number 5, Manitoba Hydro indicates that natural gas heating is one of the most affordable options available to Manitobans, and it can be cost prohibitive for households to replace their heating source. Number 6, premiers across Canada, including in the Atlantic provinces, that benefit from this decision have collectively sent a letter to the federal government calling on it to extend the carbon tax exemption to all forms of home heating, with the exception of Manitoba. 7, Manitoba is one of the only provinces, one of the only provincial jurisdictions to have not agreed with the stance that all Canadians' home heating bills should be exempt from the carbon tax. Number 8, provincial leadership in other jurisdictions have already committed to removing the federal carbon tax from home heating bills. So, we petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to remove the federal carbon tax on home heating bills for all Manitobans, to provide them much needed relief. This petition has been signed by Tyson Hale, Colton Kowalchuk, Rhett Dodds, and many, many, many other Manitobans.
The honourable member for Interlake Gimli.
Is there leave for myself to present the member Brandon West petition?
Is there leave for the member from Interlake Gimli to present the petition? No. Leave has been denied. Any other petitions? Orders of the day. Government business, the official government House Leader.
English, Honourable Speaker. Can you please call to resume debate on Bill 9, the Employment Standards Code Amendment Act, followed by the second reading of Bill 24, the Intimate Image Protection Amendment Act, followed by second reading of Bill 17, the Workplace Safety and Health Amendment Act, followed by the second reading of Bill 11, the Statutes and Regulations Amendment and Interpretation Amendment Act.
It has been announced that we will continue debate on Bill 9, the Employment Standards Code Amendment Act, followed by second readings of Bill 24, the Intimate Image Protection Amendment Act, distribution of fake intimate images, followed by Bill 17, the Workplace Safety and Health Amendment Act, followed by Bill 11, the Statutes and Regulations Amendment and Interpretation Amendment Act. The floor is open for debate. Debate is in the name. Resuming second reading debate, and it stands in the name of the member for Fort White, who has 19 minutes remaining for Bill 9.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It's an honour to always rise in this Legislative Assembly and put some words on the records. I had 19 minutes, so I spoke yesterday a little bit this, but for those millions of people viewing in at home or hundreds of people are watching this, I'll go back and recap a little bit for them because they might not have read Hansard from yesterday. So I'll go through a little quicker version of the 11 minutes of what I spoke about yesterday in regards to Bill 9. Essentially, Bill 9 is calling for an extension of sick pay from 17 weeks to 27 weeks to match the federal the federal change that happened where they also extended to 27. So this minister has brought forward a bill that says they want to go from 17 weeks to 27 weeks here in the province of Manitoba. It sounds logical, and then when you ask the minister some questions, you actually wonder, well, hold on. How was this actually thought through? Where did these numbers come from? We obviously know it's from the feds, but just because the feds say to do it doesn't mean that every province should do it. We can see a living proof of that would be the carbon tax. 7 out of 10 premiers are saying we don't want to do the carbon tax, and yet this premier here in Manitoba says he wants to do the carbon tax. He wants to make life more affordable for Manitobans. He wants to increase 23% the tax here in Manitoba. The federal government is saying to do it. This NDP government is saying they want to do it. Now, when it comes to this bill, the federal government did 27. This NDP government jumps right on board with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals and says we need to do that too. And you say, okay, well, if you want to do that, why? What's the rationale behind it? Have you consulted with businesses that are going to be affected by this? I think it's a logical question. I can see members opposite are interested by, concerned. What's the answer? Yeah, she would have for sure met with businesses. But the reality is she didn't. This minister didn't meet with any businesses. And the businesses are the ones that are going to be affected by this. You asked the minister, well, who did you meet with? And the answer was, I met with labor and businesses. And he said, which businesses? They couldn't give an answer. He said, did you meet with the largest business, Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, representing over 97,000 members? And the answer was, no. Did you meet with any of the chambers? Winnipeg Chamber, Manitoba Chamber. The Minister of Finance in this NDP government was a member of the Assiniboine Chamber of Commerce. And did you maybe have a conversation with that chamber? No. So you had no conversation with chambers, you had no conversation with businesses, and yet they want to move forward with this bill of going from 17 weeks to 27 weeks. Apologize, I'm going to take a pause. My mouth gets dry. I'm still fasting. I think it's day 10 now, so only 20 more days to go, or 18 more days to go. When asked who you did consult with, the minister says, I met with the Labor Management Review Committee, a committee that is non-binding. They make recommendations to the minister, but ultimately the minister makes that decision. The minister is responsible for his decision, and the conversation or argument of theirs say, well, the Labor Management Review said this was a recommendation, but the minister is the one responsible. On that side of the house, they want to pass the buck to someone else, say, well, you take the blame, because they know this is not a good bill. In reality, they should have consulted with businesses. They should have consulted with, who else is this going to affect? One of the largest groups in the province is AMM. Not any consultation with AMM. None. And yet they want to increase this to 27 weeks. You say, okay, so they didn't meet with anyone, so it kind of sounds like this probably isn't the greatest idea. The feds say to do it, so just because the feds say to do it doesn't mean we should do it. We learned that with the carbon tax. Again, 70% of premiers in this country say no to they say axe the tax. Over 70% of Canadians say axe it. And I bet you if you poll the businesses that are affected by this, over 70% of them, if not 99% of them would say, no, this actually doesn't make sense. And another reason why it doesn't make sense, you say, well, what are other provinces doing, Honourable Speaker? I think that's a rational question to ask and say, what are other provinces doing? Have they followed suit with the federal government? It's a logical question, and you would say, well, if other provinces did it, then yeah, we should do it too, because we all kind of make sense. There's some rationale behind it. There's some consultation done. And let's see what they did in Alberta. Nope. They're actually at 16 weeks. They're a week below where we are currently. Then you go, okay, well, let's look at what Saskatchewan is doing, because Saskatchewan's probably our closest comparison, other than, their football team is terrible, but that's okay. That's another resolution we're going to bring forward in the next sitting to talk about their football team. And then they have a hard time even counting to 12. I mean, they went to 13 and they lost the Grey Cup. It's really unfortunate for them. But I remiss, I'll get back to this bill here. Saskatchewan's at 12 weeks. 12 weeks. The amount of players they need on a football field, not 13, will they lose the Grey Cup. 12. They are at 12. We're already at 17. And this minister wants to go to 27 weeks. So when asked further, what's the rationale for going for 27 weeks? The only rationale that came back was the feds are doing it. We want to get in line with the feds. Are other provinces getting in line? No. Nobody else has. I stand corrected, sorry. Quebec did. Quebec did years ago, before this. Quebec was moved over, and Quebec kind of operates in their own, they have their own way they operate their province, and then they make different decisions than, I'd say a large part of Canada, but Quebec is the only one. No other province is doing this. New Brunswick has had consultation for years. I think it's been a 2-year consultation in New Brunswick, and they haven't come forward with any recommendations because there probably are no recommendations. They don't want to move forward with this, and yet this minister and this NDP government, with no backing, want to move forward with this bill. It is preposterous to think that we are even spending time talking about this when we could be talking about petitions, we could be talking about the carbon tax, we could be talking about this fake gas tax stunt that they've done and that they will be increasing on July 1st. We could be talking about that gas prices here in Manitoba are the highest they've been this year. The highest. They want to talk about, we lowered it. No, you didn't lower it, it's higher. Now, when I circle back to the bill.
The member tends to vector off from talking about the bill quite often. I would remind him what bill he should be talking about, and please stick to being relevant to that bill. The honourable member for Fort White.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I always appreciate your guidance, and you do give me some leeway, so I appreciate that. Circling back on this bill here, it simply doesn't make sense that this NDP government wants to move forward with a bill that they've had no consultation on. They've had no input, they haven't spoken to any businesses. It doesn't make sense. And Manitoba is actually experiencing major labor shortages over the next 5 years. And yet, this government, with no consultation with any industry, want to extend sick days. Now, to be very clear, Honourable Speaker, and everyone on that side of the House, no one on this side of the House is saying that people don't deserve or don't need the 27 weeks. That's not the conversation. The argument is not, well, we don't want to give them the 27 weeks. If there are serious illnesses, there are serious injuries out there where people need time off, and there's nothing they can do about it. We agree with that. You have cancer. My mom went through a liver transplant. I spoke about this a little bit yesterday. You need extended time off. There's complications, there's family situations, there's injuries. These are valid concerns. But to go forward with a bill that does not go into those descriptions of how it's going to be monitored, how it's going to be tracked, who's going to qualify, who's going to be responsible for paying for this. When asked the minister, how much is this going to cost businesses in Manitoba, the answer was, shockingly, I don't know. How do you not know what this is going to cost? You want to go forward blindly with a bill that you haven't had any consultation on, that you don't know the price of what it's going to cost businesses in this province, and the answer was, we haven't figured that out, we don't know. Again, it's pretty simple to figure that out. You look at what the national average is, what the change has been since the federal government did this, what other provinces are experiencing, what their percentage of claim on this extended, well, no one else has extended sick time, so what their current rate is of employees that do max out their time. These are rational arguments. This has nothing to do with NDP and PC and Liberals. This is not a partisan issue. This is a logical conversation. And sometimes you wonder, with members opposite, where is the logic? I don't know. I'm really hoping that they're going to see this and they're going to say, hey, you know what, this actually makes sense. Let's take it back and do some more consultation, then bring it forward with a wholesome approach. And at that point, of course, we can sit down and have committees and have consultation, but to force this forward makes absolutely no sense. Serious illnesses do require time to heal. There's no doubt about it. And we need to look at what those are. But who is actually calling for this change? When asked from the minister, who is actually calling? I mean, these were questions we asked. And the minister said, well, it was done by the previous government. They had done a review, and we want to bring it forward now. But where's the actual advocacy? Who's actually calling for it? I have a guess. I imagine it'll probably be some of these union bosses that are in this NDP pocket. or vice versa. Just a guess if you were to figure out why. You can do the math on that. 17 weeks, they want to bump it to 27 weeks. What does that do to the labor force, everyone? Oh, well, now you might have to use it now to get more guaranteed labor force in there because there's already a labor shortage. So how are you going to cover that? Without consultation with independent businesses, with sector-specific businesses that are going to be affected by this, and unions, of course, you have to have everyone at the table. Then you go forward with recommendations. What are the tracking requirements for this? How will it be tracked? How will it be monitored? What is the assessment? Do you have to go to your doctor and say, doc, I'm not feeling well, I want 27 weeks off, and the doctor gives you 27 weeks off? What are the requirements for? What injuries? What surgeries? What medical conditions qualify for sick leave? These are important questions that are going to cost a lot of money. We know from history the NDP don't care about spending money. They will spend it till they have no money, and then they'll borrow more money just like they did in this upcoming budget. $10 billion they borrowed. I'll stay on track because you're going to wonder where I'm going with that. And where I'm going with that is the concern is who's paying for this? What is the plan to return to work? Is there a plan for return to work for someone that's been off for 27 weeks? How will they implement this? What is the legislation, the regulation around this? What is the cost to the employer? Well, another question was, did they meet with them? And I'll answer that right now. No, they didn't meet with them. The government, this NDP government is very clear. They are not concerned with who pays for this. They want to do something because this premier's best friend, Justin Trudeau, did it. Now he wants to do it. He did the carbon tax, he wants. It's clear where this government is aligned, and that is with the NDP Liberal coalition. Plain and simple. They do not care about the cost of what this is, just like they don't care about the carbon tax. It's abundantly clear that when it comes to spending money, this government will spend money. Kiosk, failed gas tax holiday. I'll leave it there because I don't want to get called out for veering off track. But these are important concerns. Now, on the flip side of it, my good friend, the member from Burroughs, brought up some very good concerns with abuse of the program, and Manitobans are good people, Canadians are good people. Abuse won't happen, and people will do the right thing. And I would agree with the member. I would agree wholeheartedly that the vast majority of people are great people, great human beings. 99% of us are great. But there still is that chance for abuse. There still is that chance for someone to look at this opportunity and say, well, I can get an extra 10 weeks of pay on sick leave. How can I find a loophole within that system? And again, to be clear, not everyone's going to do this. I think a very, very small percentage. But that small percentage has a significant impact on the businesses that it affects. It has an impact on the morale of the company. It has an impact of the attitude within the business, of how they're going to operate. These are concerns that need to be addressed. It's not addressed in the bill. The minister had no answers for it. So when you look at the extensions in this country, you say, well, I've already talked about this, no one else has done it. Alberta, Saskatchewan, 12 weeks in Saskatchewan. That's, so this, just to be clear also, this extension we're asking for is going to be 15 weeks more than what Saskatchewan's already getting. 15 weeks more. No other province has done this. This is what they want to do. The Minister of Justice obviously wants to heckle me down, and the member from Concordia, he has a lot to say, but when it was the member from Concordia's time to speak this, he had nothing to say. Because at the end of the day, the member from Concordia doesn't care about the bottom line for Manitobans. All he wants to do is protect his union buddies. He wants to just make sure that this costs Manitobans as much money as possible because it's not coming out of his pocket. That's what it is. And then the member opposite wants to, make comments on private businesses that people are operating in Manitoba, and it just shows you the ethical balance of the member from Concordia, that he has no idea what he's actually talking about. The reality is this is not about the businesses, it's about businesses, it's also about the people that are affected by these laws. And this Minister of Justice has no concept. He promised bail reform within 100 days, or over 150 days.
Order. I shouldn't have to keep reminding the very same member over and over to remain relevant to the bill before us. He's vectored off quite often. Please keep your comments in relation to Bill 9. The honourable member for Fort White.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and again, appreciate your guidance on these conversations. Always, when you're speaking for a while, you do tend to wander. But in regards to the Minister of Justice, it wasn't a wander, Honourable Speaker. And again, I have 30 seconds here. It simply points to the fact that this government, this NDP government, and this Minister of Justice have no clue how to operate government. He promised bail reform within 100 days. It's over 150. This bill, they have no clue how to write bills. This is what, so it is relevant to this, Honourable Speaker. The gas tax bill, it was poorly written. We had to amend it. This bill we have to amend. Now, in this bill specifically, when it talks about time off, you can go to the due diligence and consultation on this bill. Who have they communicated this with? And my time is wrapping up here, so I'll get to my closing remarks. I know it's unfortunate members want to hear me go on for quite a bit longer, but it is everyone has time to speak. The biggest concern with this, Honourable Speaker, is that there has been no consultation in bringing this bill forward. The Minister said it herself. Minister of Immigration said herself there has been no consultation with businesses, not AMM, not CFIB. This is an important part of the Employee Amendment Act that should be discussed. We need to look at it wholesomely and see who does it affect, how can this province make it a better workforce for Manitobans, but forcing legislation through without doing your proper due diligence is going to leave this province in a big, big hole. We have seen that historically. Previous NDP government did it. This one looks like it's on the same track. What are the costs for this bill? How is it going to affect the workforce? How are we going to address the labor shortage that we are experiencing in this province, in this country we've seen? Does allowing 10 extra weeks of work off and sick leave when no one's calling for it, no other provinces have done it, does that make it a more competitive work atmosphere? Does it make it one that wants to bring people here, or does it make it one that's just complacent and happy to go along? I mean, I think the answer is pretty simple when you look at what this legislation is actually setting to do. Further to that, it's concerning that the minister said, well, the previous PC government had done all the work on this, we're just bringing it forward. So if the minister is just bringing previous work forward, I mean, there might have been a reason why the previous government didn't bring it forward. Does the minister not have any legislation of their own they can bring forward? I won't divert off to what other announcements this government has done, but it seems to be a recurring pattern of taking previous and bringing it forward. At the end of the day, serious illness, injuries are something that we should all take very seriously. We want to make sure workers are protected in their workplace, that if this does happen, they are safe and they will have a job to come back to. But to force legislation through without doing the proper consultation, without doing the proper costing, really exposes businesses, the competitive market, attracting new businesses here. Why would businesses want to come here if they could potentially be opened up for an extra 10 weeks or 15 weeks more than Saskatchewan? Honourable Speaker, this bill simply is not well written. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Portage-La Prairie.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. I appreciate the time today to talk about Bill 9, the Employment Standards Code Amendment Act. The Employment Standards Code is amended to extend the length of leave for serious injury or illness from 17 to 27 weeks. I want to make sure that I cover this with all the members that are here with us in the Legislative Assembly, because what I've been trying to find here through the fact sheets and the employee standards is what is considered a serious injury or illness. So a little bit of background. The federal government under the Canada Labour Code, increase the maximum length of unpaid medical leave available to federally regulated private sector employees from 17 weeks to 27 weeks in 2022. Currently, an employee working for a provincially regulated employer may be eligible for 26 weeks of EI sickness benefits, but they may not be entitled to an equivalent amount of unpaid job-protected sick leave under the applicable provincial legislation. My apologies, Assistant Deputy Speaker. Was the Deputy Speaker, was the Speaker, was he? Okay, sorry. It's been a long day for me. It's my age. It's my age, sorry. I'll try and get back on relevance on this. Yeah. I thought I missed something. Excuse me. Alberta and Saskatchewan are 16 weeks in Alberta and 12 weeks respectively. Approximately 90% of Manitoba workplaces fall under the Manitoba Employment Standards Code. The other 10% fall under the Canada Labour Code. Manitoba would be one of the first jurisdictions to match the federal changes. Stable and consistent employment is critical in Manitoba to provide for Manitobans to provide for themselves and their families. We want all Manitobans to feel supported and their jobs to be protected. I still didn't see in here too, and I want to go through these fact sheets here in a bit too, as maybe I've missed something here, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of support in here regarding mental health. And again, coming from that industry, I think that we have to look at mental health very strongly. Businesses like the agriculture business that I was in provided a lot of mental health support, and I would hope to see some of that as we move forward. Serious injuries and illnesses require time to heal and recover from with the supervision of healthcare professionals. But again, as I spoke before, it doesn't really outline very much about what a serious illness is. These injuries and illness may require more than 17 weeks. However, there is potential for abuse of this program. Employees can benefit from the extension of this time, but should only take the necessary time for recovery and care. At a time when there is pressure on the labor force and the shortages across many sectors, this bill could potentially further exacerbate the pressures that business and industry face with staffing. Manitoba would be one of the first jurisdictions to match the federal program. Being a leader means being susceptible to some bumps in the road. Other jurisdictions have done consultation, but not implemented the policy at this time. Why are we rushing this policy through? As my colleague talked about, do we have the proper and enough information on this bill to take it forward? When bringing in a new labor-related bill, it is critical, absolutely critical, that due diligence and consultation is done with both the public and employers. And that was one of the parts that I took very seriously, and I'm going to talk about a number of employers that I spoke to when we talked about this bill. We have not heard from the minister whether or not a comprehensive consultation process informed this policy. Manitobans are rightly concerned about any legislation that impacts their rights as workers and employers are concerned about changes that will impact their workforce. Extending the leave can create uncertainty for employers on staffing. I'd like to now read from the fact sheets from the employee standards, and it does cover off a fair amount of different jobs, but I think it's very important that we talk about this so that we can all hopefully understand this bill better. So agriculture. The fact sheet that I read provides an overview of the minimum standards that employers in agriculture sector need to be aware of. A guide to workplace rights and protection for foreign farm workers in Manitoba. The legal rights and protections ensured the government of Manitoba for farm workers working in this province on a seasonal or temporary basis. The Manitoba government's Employee Standards Office enforces these rights and protections and has prepared this guide to answer most of the common questions about working on a Manitoba farm. Again, I'm not seeing anything in here of what a serious injury is or what a serious illness entails. I know that dealing with some of the foreign workers that have come to Manitoba, that there is some questions over driver's licensing and things like that. So I'm glad to see that there is some in place, some guidelines for that. Standards for employees in climate-controlled facilities. On June 30th, 2008, changes made to the Employment Standards Code regarding employees working in agriculture came in effect. Different standards apply depending on the type of employment. Standards for employees of agriculture service providers. On June 30th, 2008, changes made the Employment Standards Code regarding employees working in an agricultural facility come into effect. Child performers. I didn't know that we had so much legislation and what was there for child performers. A child performer, a guide for parents, guardians of child performers, which is very critical, I think, that we need to look at as well, too. Again, what entails a serious injury or a serious illness when it comes to for parents or guardians of a child performer? The Worker Recruitment and Protection Act provides protections for children in the talent and modeling industry by making the agency and parents and guardians of the child performers jointly responsible for the safety and well-being of the child. Again, there was nothing laid out in there of what a serious illness or what can happen in those situations. Child performer recruitment license information. All businesses engaged in child performer recruitments are required to have a license from the Employment Standards Branch before they can audition, scout, or recruit a child. This requirement results from the Worker Recruitment and Protection Act, which provides protection for children in the talent and modeling industry. I think it's so important that we make sure that we are watching over our kids, that we're making sure that they're treated properly, that we make sure that they're getting the proper due to them. Child performers permit information. All children promoted by a talent or modeling agency must have a child performer permit from the employee standards. Yeah, I know. I didn't know this. Child talent agency license information. By April 1st, 2009, all businesses engaged in promoting child performers are required to have a license from the Employment Standards Branch. Each child promoted also requires a child performer permit. The requirement results from the new Worker Recruitment and Protection Act. The construction industry, which is a very important industry, and again, it entails both union and non-unionized workers. The construction industry has several minimum standards that are different from other industries. Employees performing construction work and their employers need to know the different rules for termination and general holidays. The Construction Industry Wages Act also sets a minimum wage in the industry tradesperson and other construction workers in the industrial, commercial, industrial sector, and heavy construction sectors. Heavy construction and wage schedule. The Construction Industry Wages Act, along with the Employment Standards Code, sets wages and working conditions on most Manitoban construction sites. The heavy construction sector has its own minimum standards, which I will get to, and wage levels. Construction and wage schedule. The Construction Industry Wage Act, along with the Employment Standards Code, sets wages and working conditions on most Manitoba construction sites. Employment agencies, business, temporary help agencies. Employment agency businesses. Employment agency businesses help employers find suitable employees to hire. They may also help someone write a resume and improve interview skills. They connect employers with individuals who are job searching, but they are not the employer. Again, I've ran through a number of these scenarios here, but there seems to be nothing speaking on what a serious injury or what a serious illness entails. A temporary help agency. Temporary help agencies assign their employees to their client's work site for temporary work. The temporary help agency is an employer and must ensure all wages are paid properly. Ending of employment. And again, this can be a critical time as well too, and I wondered, maybe it's during the ending of employment that they'll talk more about critical illness or critical issues that may happen. Bankruptcies and receiverships. Employees who are not paid because an employer declares bankruptcies or goes into receivership can file a claim with Manitoba employment standards. And I would think that something like that is something that can be very critical to the people that are affected by that. Employees can also apply to the Government of Canada's Wage Earner Protection Program in these situations. How do you file a claim? The Employment Standards Code establishes the right and responsibility of most employees and employers in Manitoba. Employers and employees are often able to resolve disputes by speaking with employment standards or finding information from our website. I have gone over the website many times as well too, and I would suggest that there is many unanswered questions there. If the employers and employees still disagree on the employees what they should be paid, a claim may be filed with the employment standards. As a neutral third party, employment standards can investigate and make a decision of what is owed. What is just cause? Employers have the right to terminate employees, but must give notice in ending. An exception to the notice requirements applies where the employer can prove just cause. Just cause refers to conduct that is such a serious nature. Employment Standards investigates complaints to determine if the employer had just cause or not. Other government supports that are out there to help us make this decision. Employment standards legislation does not cover all issues in the workplace. Employers and employees often ask questions better asked by another government agency or department. Paying wages and keeping records. Employers and employees need to keep accurate records of hours worked and the amount paid for these hours, which again, I think is very critical when we look at this legislation here, if we're going to amend to extend the length of the leave for serious injury or illness from 17 weeks to 27 weeks. Termination of employment. Employment relationships can be ended by either an employer or an employee. In most cases, the legislation requires the person ending the employment to give due notice. Foreign workers recruitment. This was another part that I didn't understand either, is where foreign workers are covered in this, because I know, again, in the agriculture industry, we saw a number of it at High Life when the member from Agassiz and I toured the High Life site, is where are foreign workers covered under this policy? And again, is there different criteria for foreign workers when we're talking about rights of employees there? Employer registration information. All employers wanting to recruit foreign workers other than Manitoba provincial nominees in Manitoba will first be required to register with employment standards. This requirement results from the Workers' Recruitment and Protection Act, which improves protection for foreign workers. Foreign workers' requirement for license information. A license is required from the employment standards for persons engaging in foreign worker recruitment in Manitoba under the Worker Recruitment and Protection Act. The Act provides protection for foreign workers and sets out obligation that recruiters must meet to be approved for a license in Manitoba. Again, where I think this could have been very helpful is the 64 Filipino healthcare workers that have come to the province thanks to the former immigration minister that went over and brought some of these people back. Yeah. Should be, yeah, it should be, but yeah, for some reason we're not going down that path. Foreign general holidays. Again, a very important statement to make sure that everybody is protected that is working in our province. A license is required from the employment standards for persons engaging in foreign workers recruitment in Manitoba under the Worker Recruitment and Protection Act. This act provides protection for foreign workers and sets out the obligation that recruiters must meet to be approved for license in Manitoba. Holidays. With Easter just around the corner, I think it's important that we talk about holidays and what holidays that people can use. General holidays are sometimes referred to as statutory holidays, or STAT holidays for short. They're days recognized by law and holidays. Employees either have the day off with pay or are paid differently if they work. But again, it doesn't really talk about if they don't work. So again, I'm not sure there how that works. And if the holidays, from the 17 to the 27 weeks, if you have to take holidays out of there, or if you have the 27 weeks, do you get an extra 4 weeks of holidays in there? I just can't find that information, and I can't move further with this. A quick guide to employment standards. The Employment Standards Code provides employees and employers with information regarding minimum wage standards, protection for young workers, paying wages, and even more. Filing a claim. The Employment Standards Code establishes the right and responsibilities of most employees and employers in Manitoba. There is other government support. Employment standards legislation does not cover all the issues in the workplace. Employers and employees often ask questions better answered by another government agency or department. I would like to, if I could at this time, I want to take a break from that and just talk about some of the... No, yeah. Well, the carbon tax is going to affect us as well, too. But one of the questions that I did ask the minister was, who did they talk to when they talked about this? Because I found that it was very important, and then that we must understand what the employees are doing here. Is there going to be a question here? Is if we move through with this legislation, again, the Employment Standards Code is amended to extend the length of leave for serious injury or illness from 17 weeks to 27 weeks. So first of all, I asked every one of these employers if they could tell me exactly, specifically, or where they could give me the information of what was a serious injury, and they couldn't help me with that. So some of the companies that I talked to in my constituency, Southport Aerospace, one of the largest, if not the largest employer in my constituency. Currently, they're under contract negotiations. They're looking for new tenants every day to bring into Portage La Prairie, into the old CFB base. 25 years flight training, hundreds of employees competing against. Yeah, there is. So again, we'll talk about that because the employees under this act, we have to look to see how those employees are going to be protected at the air show. So one of the things that is a big concern for somebody like Southport Aerospace that is competing for a 25-year flight training contract is Moose Jaw is also in the running. Saskatchewan right now has 12 weeks. So again, they're very concerned what kind of an effect that will have. Southport Aerospace has a very strong safety program. I also talked to a few of the grain millers and grain companies. And just 3 of those companies that I spoke to was Richardson International, Parrish and Heimbecker, and Patterson Grain, because they have been embedded in this provincial government, in this province for years and years. Yeah. Strong safety programs, state-of-the-art facilities. But again, we are competing with Saskatchewan and Alberta. They said if it's tough to do business in Manitoba, we have to look at other alternatives. I stayed with the agriculture industry as well too, and I talked to some independent ag dealers. I spoke with Suregrow Farm Supply, which is based out of Brandon, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, independent ag dealer in Manitoba. I talked to a smaller dealer, Catelier Seeds at Letellier, Manitoba. I talked to Parallel Ag, who is a group of young guys that come to the province of Manitoba to try and create business, but again, a little bit scared about what might be coming down the pipeline. I also talked to Double Diamond, which again is a large ag retailer based in southwest Manitoba. These people are the lifeblood of their communities. That's where their workers come from, but their spouses also work in those little communities too. And they're worried. They're worried what this might do to them. What if one of the companies moves away? What happens to the other workers? So again, I think we have to look at this very closely. How do they find employees in small communities? Again, it's one of the issues that we run into. We're battling a lot of times with finding employees that are willing to stay in these small communities. Again, they deal with safety programs. I spoke with some grocery stores, in particular, Family Fare, Portage Supermarket, and Stan's Groceteria. Small independents, low unemployment rate. In fact, they have trouble filling their jobs throughout the year. Strong community supporters. I can speak for Portage Supermarket and Portage La Prairie. They're always giving back to the community. But I asked the owners of Portage Supermarket, what is a serious injury? What is a serious illness? And they said, is there some definition somewhere? And again, I'll continue on after going through these here. Provide work programs for high schools, vocational programs, and food bank suppliers, which again, they're going to find harder and harder to do with this April Fool's joke of carbon tax that's coming through. Another one of the employers that I spoke to was Shindico. Now, I think we all know Shindico. They do business worldwide, but they do business from Manitoba. This is their home. They originally started out in Portage la Prairie in a grocery store and have built a conglomerate of businesses. Very strong, philanthropical, huge employee base, very little turnover. In fact, one of their employees that I talked to had been with them for 33 years. I said to her, I said, Sarah, have you ever had any problem with your employee getting time off or making sure that you're treated properly? She said, I could not find a better employer than Sandy and Robert Schindelman. Why would companies like Shindico and that want to stay and continue to do business here if other countries and other provinces are easier to work with? I want to talk about a situation that I had myself. For the past 7 years before I had the privilege to be in this chamber, I chaired the Municipal Board of Manitoba. In 7 years, we never, ever, ever, never had a full complement of staff. There was always somebody off on sick leave, but wait.
Run the socialist way?
We couldn't hire temps. We couldn't bring in workers to do that. So it just slowed everything down. For almost 30 board members, when we started out, to 16 wanting to work, stress it put on other employees. And I can tell you, just for a little work here, the work that we did at the municipal board saved this province $4 to $5 million. Minimum wage at the municipal board? I don't think so. What is the plan for replacement workers? Well, I know what the plan is not for replacement workers. It's not to bring in any Filipino healthcare workers to try and work at our hospitals. This proposed bill will not affect employers. It will affect employees. It is very shallow. Nobody knows what a serious injury is. Nobody knows about time off. Shall we change the name of the bill maybe to Hard to Do in Business in Manitoba Act? Or sorry, Small Business and Communities, You're Not Important. Welcome to Saskatchewan and Alberta Act, where we are more open for business. I'd like to continue with some of the labor standards here. And what is the Labor Board? So many people confuse the provincial employment standards and the Manitoba Labor Board. So again, we'll be able to clear this up here a little bit. I hope so. Employment standards enforces minimum standards and investigates disagreements between employers and employees. The Manitoba Labor Board adjudicates decisions made by employment standards and gives employers and employees a chance to present evidence at a hearing. Who's covered by the Employment Standards Code? Employment standards legislation covers employees whose workplaces are under provincial jurisdiction. Almost 90%, I didn't know this, almost 90% of workplaces in Manitoba fall under provincial jurisdiction.
Order. The member's time has expired. I know. Is there leave for the member to continue? The honorable member for Turtle Mountain.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. The Honorable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. It is really a pleasure to rise today to speak to this long-awaited, long-needed bill brought forward by our government's absolutely incredible Minister of Labor and Immigration. I am so proud of our minister. So very proud to stand beside and sit beside this incredible labor minister. I'm incredibly proud of our NDP government and its vision for one Manitoba. Where the opposition would and has and continues to divide Manitobans, pit workers against employers, that's not what this bill's about. Member after member after member has gotten up on this debate and expressed their distrust for workers, that as if workers are going to abuse this system. That's not what this bill is about, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The previous government's record is clear. Workers know, Manitobans know. This previous government legislated against workers immediately, and they did so constantly during their time in government. That's one of the reasons they're sitting on that side of the House, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Workers in Manitoba have suffered. Families in Manitoba have suffered. Public services in Manitoba have suffered. And ultimately, our economy has suffered. And I really hope and urge Manitobans to listen to this important debate, because this bill is an excellent one. But I hope that they are paying attention and listening to the nonsense coming from the opposition, the distrust for workers, and some of the absolutely ridiculous arguments that are coming forward. This bill is about unpaid leave for sick and injured workers that need and deserve this House's support.
Hear, hear.
We seek a balanced approach on this side of the House, Honorable Deputy Speaker, and we're here to return that balance that has been missing for far too long under this this previous failed PC government, who again legislated against workers and their families constantly during their time in office. We're here to return balance to the labor market and fairness to workers and to employers. We're ultimately the party of workers, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I myself come to this place and to this seat as a worker. That's what brought me to this House. That's what brought me to this excellent party that I'm so proud to be a part of. I came to this party after 10 years as a postal worker. I used to deliver mail here to many of your constituents, many of our constituents, and it was a privilege and an honor to do so. And in my time as a postal worker, I became a shop steward and a worker advocate, a worker representative. Postal workers have a very incredibly hard job, Honorable Speaker, and I give all of my respect and admiration to the postal workers that serve this community here in Manitoba and across Canada. And because of how hard that job is, postal workers have many injuries. They have many acute injuries. They fall and slip and break their wrist or their ankle, delivering mail on slippery roads. They also have cumulative injuries. It is a hard job. It is hard on the knees. It's hard on the back. It's hard on shoulders. People on this side of the House know this. And one of the hardest jobs that I had as a shop steward and a worker advocate when I had to represent my fellow postal workers was when we were dealing with postal workers that were dealing with serious injuries, serious illness, and they were off work. That in and of itself, being injured, being sick, is incredibly stressful. I think we can all agree on that. And workers don't need the extra additional stress of having to worry about whether or not they're going to qualify for EI benefits, whether or not the provincial legislation is going to help them qualify for those EI benefits. Workers don't deserve the extra and added stress of income insecurity. They need to heal and they need to rest, and this House needs to support that. If members opposite had been in my shoes on those files and seen what these workers go through, they would support this bill, Honorable Deputy Speaker. And they would support the workers that this bill will impact so greatly. When workers are injured, they need the time off to heal. They should not have to worry. The opposition has been speaking about the impacts to employers with vacancies and how are employers going to manage this. It's an absolutely false narrative. It's a paper tiger. Sick and injured workers are off work. That's already happening. And it's unfortunate for employers to have to deal with, and we empathize with those employers. Absolutely. But when workers are sick and injured, they are off work. What we're talking about in this bill is whether or not they will be paid and compensated, and their families can have support. That's what we're talking about. As a former worker myself, I can attest that no one is getting rich on EI, has been, asserted by the opposition, that lazy workers are going to lie so that they can sit at home and collect big paychecks. That's not what's happening, Honorable Deputy Speaker. No one has ever gotten rich off EI. The opposition, instead of talking about how great this bill is, this bill that's put forward by our absolutely excellent, dedicated, fantastic Labor and Immigration Minister, instead of supporting this important bill and the workers that it is going to help and the Manitobans that are going to benefit from this bill, which is what we all got elected to do. We're elected here to work in the best interests of Manitobans, all Manitobans. And again, on this side of the House, we're here to restore balance in Manitoba. We're here to work for employers, and we're here to work for workers. We're here to work for all Manitobans on this side of the House, unlike the opposition. The Honourable Labour Minister has handed me a list from the LMRC, the Labour Management Review Committee, yes, which has representatives from employers and also workers. The opposition has wasted our time debating this bill, talking about how the employers are not being represented. Let's list the employers that are represented on the Manitoba Employers Council, which is represented on LMRC, which endorsed this bill, which recommended this bill to go forward. So let's talk about the employers whose representative group support this important bill brought forward by our, I'm going to say it again, I'm going to say it many more times, our absolutely amazing, dedicated Labor and Immigration Minister. So endorsing this important work is the Canadians, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters, the City of Winnipeg, the Association of Manitoba Construction Association of Rural Manitoba.
It's your constituent.
Credit Union Central of Manitoba. Keystone Agricultural Producers, one of our great friends. Wow. Manitoba Aerospace Association, the great Manitoba Chamber of Commerce, Manitoba Electrical League, the Manitoba Fashion Institute, Manitoba Home Builders Association, the Manitoba Hotel Association, the Manitoba Port Council, again, great partners of ours, the Manitoba Restaurant and Food Service Association, Merit Contractors, the Mining Association of Manitoba. Yeah, I can keep going. Pinnacle, Princess Auto, Restaurants Canada, Retail Council of Canada. I could go on and on and on, Deputy Honourable Speaker. There are many more on this list, but I know that the opposition cannot wait to hear themselves speak. So I will end my comments with saying once again, on this side of the House, we are here to return balance to Manitoba. We are here to represent these fantastic businesses that I've just read out. We're here to represent workers. We're here to represent the best interests of Manitobans. And I urge the opposition to get on board.
The honourable member for Turtle Mountain.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. And I just want to put a few words on this bill when it comes to the Employment Standards Code Amendment Act. The employment standards were extending the length of leave for serious injuries and illness from 17 weeks to 27 weeks. And Honourable Deputy Speaker, when it comes to employers and employees, I take offense when the member for Rossmere basically says that, we're against employees. I have to say that, I was an employer for many years, for over 20 years, and I had staff, and that staff became my family. And I take offense when someone actually accuses us of treating employees terrible, or we don't respect employees. Well, the thing is, I just want to say that, when it came to my employees, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I've been in 20 years, and And we had one of the lowest turnover rates in our company. I think we had one person who actually decided not to come back after maternity leave because she chose to be with her child, to be a stay-at-home mom, and we respected that. And the thing was, I believe that of the 20 years that I was an employer, that was the only turnover staff that we had, was somebody who wanted to stay home with the child. And Honorable Deputy Speaker, when it comes to being in the insurance industry, I respect the benefits that I wanted to give to my staff. When it came to staffing the actual disability insurance, I wanted to make sure that was one of the primary insurance benefits that our staff got, because the fact is, if they were disabled anytime with long-term disability, they had coverage, and we knew that they were taken care of. We would give them the amount of sick days, whatever we needed, to make sure that they would carry forward into EI and eventually to long-term disability, depending how long the waiting period was to get those benefits. And we were a private company. And when it comes to, a lot of times, when it comes to private companies like that, we do look after our staff. We respect them. My daughter, she actually is working now with Myers Norris Penny. She worked in finance for a period of time as a summer student for the co-op program. And she felt that it was when it came to the employees there, it was them and us. It was basically the unions, what the attitude that they put towards employees sometimes, it's not we. And I feel that now my daughter's now working at Myers Norris Penny as a summer student, and she just loves it there. She says it's like a team, Honorable Speaker. And so this is how it's important that, we do respect employees, because, we need employees to drive this economy, to make sure that businesses are successful. And the fact is, I'm really scared when it comes to the amount of labor bills that are being introduced here, Honorable Speaker. That's my big concern right now, is because the fact is there's no consultation. There is basically no bill briefing, as our colleague from Agassiz had stated in her matter of privileges, that she never had a chance to get briefed on these bills. And that is my concern about the agenda of this NDP government. We saw that in the past, that the unions run this party of the NDP. And so that's my concern, is what's going to come up to us next as our private sector, who actually has to deal with growth in this economy. Because at the same time, this is the same NDP government that got rid of the Economic Committee of Cabinet. Where are we going to get the revenues to grow this economy? They say that we have the lowest inflation. But what about the growth of the economy? Inflation stays low when there's no growth, Honorable Speaker. That is my concern right now. They're not saying that they're open for business, and that's my concern, because right now, I've been talking to many employers, people who actually provide employees services to employers, and the concern that they have, many employers are out there, concern is what is coming next when it comes to labor bills coming forward here. Like my colleague from Portage Prairie had said, there's a lot more and better environment out west. And when I became an MLA, the reason why I became an MLA, Honorable Speaker, is because I saw the advantages. When Saskatchewan sends literature our way in the mailbox and saying that how much better it is to be in Saskatchewan, all the benefits. And that was when the NDP actually increased the PST, put PST at 8%.
Order, please. I would ask the member to focus his comments on the bill before us. The honourable member for Turtle Mountain.
Thank you. When it comes to the bills, Honourable Speaker, it's the concern that what's coming forward on this bill here. And the fact is, when it comes to when the member from Rossmere talked about the postal workers, and she was a postal employee, well, that's already covered under the federal bill that was put forward, and for 27 weeks, the Canadian Labour Code. And so, my Honourable Speaker, it's really concerning that when it comes to the advantages and when it comes to this bill being put forward, there could be more advantages going out west. And that's what concerns I have right now, is because a lot of employers are looking that route. Because again, the last NDP government did not focus on the new Western Partnership Agreement. They avoided it. But at the same time, we have to be competitive with our neighbors. And why is it that we are moving this bill so quickly when no other bill is being moved in the other provinces? Why isn't there some more time to consultation with employers? And that was a concern that we have. I know they did a list, but I'm gonna talk to some of these people that are on that list and see if they've really been advised and they've actually support this bill, Honourable Speaker. So that is my concern right now. And like I said, when it comes to employees, making sure the safety of the employees, the other thing is, I know the member from Rossmere also indicated too, that employees, they will never take advantage of the system and stuff like that. But how many insurance investigations are being done to look at what people abuse the system? It's always being abused over time. And it's not, like I said, 90%, 95%, 99% of employees don't abuse the system. They're here to be dedicated to their job, their career, but there are some that are going to take advantage of it. And that's my kind of concern right now is that right now we have, I talked with my wife who's in healthcare, who actually has staff. And there's always seems like the same amount of people who abuse the system. And I think we see that in every industry, there's abuse. And that's my concern right now, is that as the member from Rossmere has indicated, there's no abuse happens. Employees are all the same. They're all here to dedicate themselves to their cause. But we're seeing a lot more, especially after COVID. A lot of people don't want to come back to work. There's concerns about that. There's concerns about the work ethic that we have right now. And then wondering why we need immigration. We need immigration because they're hardworking people that come to this country. And we want to make sure that, we embrace the welcoming. Like the fact is, like my colleague had said, for the Filipino nurses who are coming from the Philippines, we went there. We actually had over 300 of them wanting to come here. They actually were trying to get all their papers in order. And all of a sudden, I believe this labor minister actually has canceled the program. And meanwhile, I was talking to Prairie Mountain Health CEO, Brian, and he was talking to me about how many Filipino nurses had come towards the end of the year. And this is what Manitoba, especially in Western Manitoba, where sometimes it's very hard to get professionals to come out there because our population's aging out there. No thanks to the last NDP government that kind of hollowed out our rural areas. We were just trying to rebuild them again. And that's where my dedication is making sure that we grow our industries. I'm working with many industries in my constituency to making sure that there's increased employment so that there's more families that come to these rural areas. And that's important because the fact is we do have to take care of them. We got to make sure that, I'm not quite sure what we have to go in from 17 weeks to 27 weeks when they are taken care of. They are not taken advantage of because employers know the importance of employees. But it's this NDP government that's basically working with the unions, union leaders, who are basically are railroading these bills into play. And that concerns the business community right now. It concerns investment into our province, Honourable Speaker. And that's where, I would say, I just said it this morning, that when it came to Portage la Prairie, Roquette now employs over 300 people there. And that was from our government while opening for business, creating a better environment. That could have easily went to Saskatchewan, but we made sure it stayed here in Manitoba. And when it came to Simplot, we want to make sure that the expansion of potatoes is here. And we do have to have some talks with our potato producers because, again, we want to make sure that there's employment there, there's production there, and they need more potatoes. They need more irrigations. And that is what we're going to be continuing to work to make sure that this government, this NDP government, knows about that. But it just seems like right now their focus is on passing bills because, again, they owe, I have to say, they owe the unions a lot when it comes to the amount of door knocking they had the unions out there. They made sure that the union leaders are taken care of. That's who ran the NDP government back in the dark days of the NDP, 16 years, Honourable Speaker. And so these are the concerns that I had. I remember one of my good friends who works in the employment services, he said, back in the day when the NDP, in the 16 years that they were in power, we had to worry about what was coming at us. And then all of a sudden, when we formed government, they say now we can focus on our business now. Because now we can focus on making sure that we grow our business, because we don't have to worry about the labor bills that are going to change things that puts us on a disadvantage. Because right now, a lot of businesses, they have choices. And with their clean energy of green hydroelectricity, we have the opportunity to attract more of that business. But what do? They focus, they got their union leaders to go into their boards, and they got rid of Economic Development Board of Cabinet. They got rid of the boards that they put on, board members they put on are union leaders, especially for MPI. And it's like putting the fox in the henhouse, Honorable Speaker. And that's my biggest concern right now. What is their agenda coming forward? How many more bills are they going to come up with that are going to try to sneak in to make sure that, we are at a disadvantage to this province? And again, like I said, it's important that we actually continue growing this economy. And I'm going to make sure in my constituency that we work together with industry to make sure that we have a good environment in rural Manitoba, because I'm really concerned what's coming here in the future. And like I said, when we came to, we had one of the highest education costs in the country, but we came in 10th last when the NDP were back in government. Like I said, my mother-in-law always says, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And I think it's rhyming right now. And I know the good intentions. I think that budget that they're going to come up with, I think it's one day too late, because I believe it should have come out on April 1st, like an April Fool's joke, because that's what's going to be. I feel that they have...
Order, please. Once again, I would remind the member to keep his comments relevant to Bill 9. The Honourable Member for Turtle Mountain.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And like I said, Bill 9, when it comes to changing from 17 to 27 weeks, again, it's when it comes to employees, if it's cancers or if it's an injury, a serious injury, those things are legit. They need to be looked after. I know our staff, if we had a bill like this come in, we looked after them regardless. We wanted to make sure, like I said, a lot of employers out there do have disability insurance, a group plan for their employees. And I, as a broker, I used to make sure that companies that I used to deal with actually provided disability insurance for their employees. Because that is one of the most important things to replace your income is the hardest thing. You can have benefits of dental, but when it comes to disability and having been off for periods of time, long periods of time, and like anything else, we've always had jobs ready for people if they ever were injured. We want, if they were valuable to us. We wanted to make sure that they were taken care of, and we already guaranteed their income. They were on disability. We guaranteed their jobs, and I'm not quite sure why this bill has to be rushed so quickly with no consultations. And I'm thinking there's a series of bills coming forward, and I'd be happy to speak on every bill that comes this way. Because the thing is, I'm connected to the business community. I'm a capitalist. And I feel that at the same time, we do have to look after our staff. And it's so important, especially now with competition out there. The competition out there is taking care of the employees, their families, because in all my time when I was as an employer, my staff were always my family. We actually were a team. I didn't call myself as an employer. I called myself a team leader. Yep. Because the fact is, I embraced the input that each of these employees gave us. I made sure that we give enough parameters to make sure that they can make decisions without feeling scared. We created an environment that we all grew together. We were here together, and as we all grew together as a family, for my staff, the company grew with it. And we had a profit sharing program, Honourable Speaker, to make sure that if the company did well, they also benefited from the growth of the company. That's entrepreneurship. That is capitalism, to making sure that people are looked after. And it's not like them and us, and that was where I'm concerned about sometimes about these bills. It divides the employees with the employer. And right now, when it comes to healthcare is very important. We had an extended healthcare program too. Thank you for reminding me of that, the honourable member from Rossmere. We had a extended healthcare program. We had dental. We wanted to make sure that we had all that in our benefits. We had a group RSP, making sure that they were taken care of on their retirement. So this is why I'm not quite sure why this has to be rushed through without consultation, without briefing to our critic. And in the past, I remember being in here, Honourable Speaker, when it came to being here for the first time, when I came in opposition for two and a half years. And I remember any critic role that I had, the minister always gave us a brief, and I give them a benefit of saying, of communicating that. When I had a bill, I had a briefing. I remember having the Honourable Member, Minister for Justice come into my office when he was critic, or the Honourable Minister for Municipal Relations come to my office for a briefing, or if he couldn't make it, his staff came in. So this is why it's so important. It's disrespectful. That's why there's no trust right now with what's coming forward here. And we had a point of matter of privilege here, and that's concerning that we have. And this is why I feel that this bill is being rushed through without consultation, without this is why we're debating this right now. We want to make sure that anything else that comes up here, we make everybody accountable here in this chamber. Absolutely. Especially any bills that come forward here. And I'll continue doing that. And making sure that I look after my constituents. Because a lot of my constituents are employers. And I had a list, I'm doing an article, and I had a list of all of the major employers that are expanding in my constituency. And they're expanding with manufacturing. They're also having challenges. They're trying to get people to come to small towns to have this that skill that they need, especially when it comes to manufacturing, for welders, to electricians, to electrical engineers, when it comes to putting things together, like manufacturing goods and services. And right now I'm working on a case where a person is coming from the States to do some manufacturing for travel trailers in the Boisville area. And I look forward to it, because the fact is, the reason why he wants to come to Manitoba, to our area, and do more expansion in Canada, because we have health care. They don't have to pay healthcare premiums. So I know when I was in government and when I was in Economic Committee Cabinet, that was where our sale was, is that we don't pay the premiums that we pay, that Americans have to pay for. There is that disadvantage to come here. And like I said, this is why the bill, it's important that when it comes to employers and making sure that, when it comes to, amount of weeks, a lot of these employers in my constituency actually have also disability insurance to make sure that their employees are looked after. If they got injured, they can go on long-term disability, and they will make sure that they're going to make sure that once that person's well, they're going to hire them back. So I'm not quite sure why this has to be pushed through right away. I think there's more pressing issues that we need to deal with, especially when it comes to healthcare workers, to come to Manitoba to actually work in our healthcare system. We're challenging right now what the minister did. Instead of focusing on these really not that critical bill here, they should never have canceled the program for Filipino nurses coming into this province. We need them. We need them in a worse way. And a lot of our Filipino nurses, I have to say, a lot of them are in Killarney. A lot of them are in Russell. They're in Roblin. They're in Verdun. And our population, our Filipino population, is growing in these communities. Actually, Russell, in Russell, Manitoba, in the western region, actually has a dedicated grocery store for Filipino people. So
Order, please. Once again, the member's vectoring off from talking about this specific bill. So I would remind him to keep his comments relevant to Bill 9. I realize it's hard to do sometimes, but just make sure your comments are always relevant to this bill. The honourable member for Turtle Mountain.
Thanks, Honourable Speaker. And I know we're in the opposite role there, and I remember I had to do that same thing to you too, so I understand. So anyways, I just want to get my point across that it's important that, that, you know, when it comes to this bill, that things are not getting forced into, to get into passing here, because the fact is that we have a lot more questions here. And I know I have colleagues who also want to talk on this bill. So the thing was, I will probably leave it at that, but I want to say, you know, we are watching. We want to make sure that my constituents, my employers, the employees that work and have a great relationship with their employers are all being taken care of. But that doesn't split them. And this is what this bill sort of does, is kind of splits the employees with the employers. Because a lot of employers and employees, contrary to the member for Radisson has said, have a very good working relationship. And I don't want to jeopardize that. So this is why I'm speaking on this bill. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The honourable member for Riding Mountain.
Yes, thank you, Honourable Speaker. It's the mountains to end the day here. First Turtle and then Riding. I'll try to keep this a little bit light for the rest of the way because my colleagues have said a lot this afternoon. And I just want to tell a little story about you, Honourable Speaker, before I start talking about Bill 9. I was telling some of my new colleagues here, and I'm sure most of the members of the new members of the opposition won't know this, but when the Speaker was a rookie in this House, he had unlimited speaking time given to him by the leader at the time, and the Honourable Speaker went for 2 afternoons. He was heckled from our side. He went for 2 afternoons. He just built on what we said, and it was amazing, actually. So the Honourable Speaker was a great debater in his day, and I'll always remember those 2 afternoons when he was speaking.
Order, please. I would ask the member to keep his comments relevant to the specific bill we're talking about. The honourable member for Turtle Mountain.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker. I tried to give you a compliment, but I'll get back to...
The honourable member for Riding Mountain.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker. I tried to give you a compliment, but now we'll get back to Bill 9 and talk about things. But I still admire you, even though you had to admonish me for what I said. Thank you very much. There's been a lot said this afternoon, and I just want to assure the government, my government colleagues, that you know, on this side of the House, we're not opposed to labor legislation, good labor legislation. I think when it comes to employees, we certainly want to keep them safe, and we want them to have as much time off as they need to recover from a serious injury or illness. I guess that I think myself and our colleagues are concerned about, is this bill necessary right now? The federal government has just come in with these rules, and the other provinces in Western Canada have far fewer weeks. Now, I'm not saying we have to follow Saskatchewan and Alberta on everything, but we are a part of the New West Partnership, so I would think there should be consultations on many of these things with ministers, premiers from other provinces before something like this is put on. Now, I have no problem with Manitoba being a leader. I think Manitoba leads in a lot of things, and but in terms of this, I think that perhaps a little more consultation with our prairie colleagues would have been good. I take exception to the members this afternoon on the government side saying that we're wasting their time by debating Bill 9. That's the purpose of this House. We are in opposition here. We'll admit we're in opposition. They're in government. We debate bills. We're not wasting time. We want to tell the public we're not wasting time. We're making points. We're trying to get our points across. And they have time to get up and like the Minister did of Environment and Climate Change, he got up this afternoon and spoke on behalf of their side, which was really welcomed. So I guess, like my colleagues had said, and I want to thank my colleague from Portage and my colleague from Fort White, my colleague from Agassiz, on their comments on Bill 9. I think they made a lot of great points, and you know, they've said a lot of things, and there's not a ton of things left for me to say on this bill, but I guess, no. I want to talk about the consultation. Now, this afternoon it was revealed by the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. She read out a whole list of who they supposedly consulted with. And I guess my question would be, when there was a question period on Bill 9, and I think the question was asked on our side.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure.
Why weren't those names brought out then? Because a lot of those names are familiar to us on this side of the House, and we could have certainly consulted with these groups ourselves to find out if they're completely in favor of this legislation. Maybe we are wasting our time talking about it. But I think we'll want to check into that and just make sure that all of those groups have been consulted and had time to consult with their members across Manitoba. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business represents small business all across Manitoba, and they would have to do a survey of those members to get a position on this. And I'd be interested to see if they did that, and we'll certainly be checking into that. Honourable Speaker, I haven't been an employee since I was 18 years old till I joined the legislature here. So I was an employer for 40 years in various businesses and things, and I value my employees, I certainly do. And you know, I would want an employee that was sick, long-term illness, things like that, to have much time to recover as possible. I think most small business employers are compassionate and will certainly bend. No, there's always bad apples. The Minister for Environment and Climate Change says not all of them. Well, of course, there's bad apples everywhere. But I think the majority of small businesses value their employees because they recognize how hard it is to find a new employee should they not value their employer. You know, like I say, the one business I have staff members that have been there 40 years. 40 years, Honourable Speaker. That's a long time. And, you know, I don't need any regulations to tell me what employees should be treated like. But in saying that, you know, 17 weeks to 27 weeks, why do we have to do it so quickly? Why can't we go up in stages? I mean, we're going to be, 15 weeks higher than our neighbor in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But again, Honourable Speaker, that is only used if people are sick or have a long-term disability, I guess. You know, and it's unpaid. According to what I see here, it's unpaid. Anything else, if it's not covered under a union agreement, would likely be covered by EI. So, so on this side of the House, I guess it's certainly not, this side of the House, we're not anti-labor by any stretch of the imagination. I think we want to ensure that both sides are heard in this and continue to ensure that labor in Manitoba is protected and has rights. But small businesses, you know, I'm concerned how this is going to perhaps affect them. You just can't go out in the street and find employees to replace good employees too. And I think that you know, it's a lot of times employers will try to hold the position with maybe not even filling it. So they do more with less employees to try to get through until this long-term employee recovers from their illness or injury. And until you've been a small business owner, I don't think perhaps this House and doesn't realize the stress on small business owners sometimes, you know, especially small business owners. And I'm talking, you know, 6 to 10 employees, that sort of thing, you know, to get a call in the morning that your employee's sick or anything. And you have compassion, for sure. But it's still the stress of trying to fill that position or doing the extra work yourself as a small business owner. So, you know, I appreciate the employee side of it for sure. And, you know, there's no reason that provincial governments and federal governments shouldn't have regulations in place that allow the employees to certainly take the time they need to recover from sickness or a long-term injury, that's for sure. I guess the previous government would have consultations online a lot of times, and I'd be anxious to know if there was any consultations done on this with the average Manitoban that could put their views known, the average employee. Because, I mean, there's employees out there that maybe like to comment on that. There's small businesses that would like to comment that maybe aren't a member of CFIB. So I think that having this up in Engage Manitoba for a 45-day consultation period would have been appropriate for the Minister of Labour to do. Now, I know the Minister of Labour has put this bill forward with all good intentions and things, and I congratulate her on putting the bill forward. And it's our job as an opposition to ask questions and talk about it, which I'm doing and my colleagues have done all afternoon and the afternoon before. So, and again, we would welcome any member from the government side to get up again when I'm done and fill in the blanks here if there's anything that I'm missing.
Let me speak.
I see the member for Fort Garry wants to speak here. I think I'll stay up here. I'm enjoying myself up here this afternoon. You know, I get to. I think I'll stay up here. I have a little more time left. I think 20 minutes on Bill 9, and.
You should use it.
I'll use it for sure. So again, what's the rush? Is there not more pressing legislation that the government might have to get going here? I know there's a number of bills, Honourable Speaker, that are waiting to be introduced. We're anxious to see the contents of those bills, and unfortunately we have to take the Easter break here and just look at Bill 9 because we don't see Bill 12 or whatever other bills they have. I don't know the numbers. It's kind of like a bingo over there, but I think that Bill 9 is well-intentioned by the minister, no question about that, and I think our side here has had a lot of time to talk about it, and we'll debate it more fulsome after the budget, I suppose, Honourable Speaker. I think I'd like to wish my colleagues on the other side of the House a very happy Easter and a great constituency week, and hopefully they can enjoy reading about Bill 9 like I have during that week, and we'll come back with a new attitude. Thank you.
Please. When this matters before the House, the honourable member for Riding Mountain will have 20 minutes, 19 minutes remaining. The hour being 5 p.m., the House is adjourned. The hour being 5 p.m., the House is adjourned and stands adjourned until April 2nd at 1:30 p.m. or at the call of the Speaker.